Great. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our January 22nd, 2021 Governor and Executive Council meeting.
Conference recording started.
Great. Before we start, those who haven't already, I just ask to make sure that folks take a moment to silence their cell phones if they could, and any other electronic devices, just so we can be considerate. We'll have some folks joining us over the telephone today. I believe Councilor, Janet, sorry, Janet is saying to count everybody up. Councilor Stevens is joining us on the phone today. Councilor Stevens, are you with us this morning?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Councilor Stevens, can you begin by a bit of a formality? Please state your name as well as where you're located and if anyone is with you.
Janet Stevens, my home office in Rye, and I'm alone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bear with me one moment. Okay, great. Wonderful. Just want to make folks aware that we do have an item from the Business Finance Authority today, which is subject to a public hearing. And so if there are any members of the public who wish to speak to this item, this will happen later on in the meeting. Just please note that if you're on virtually over the phone, to kind of virtually raise your hand, press 5* when it is your time to speak, and I believe Fallon is on and she'll be able to recognize you and allow anyone from the public to speak at the appropriate time. So that's 5* for the item from the Business Finance Authority. Just want to kind of give that heads up there. Councilman Wilmington, how are you? Good to see you. Good morning. Do you want to start us off with a reading or the pledge?
The reading of the pledge.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
In honor of Martin Luther King Day earlier this week, a quote from Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail in 1963. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds.
Great, thank you.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the items in our regular meeting, we do have the swearing in of a legislator. So is Miss Ann Kopp, is she on the phone with us this morning?
Yes, I am, Governor.
Okay, Ann. So if you please raise your right hand. We do this virtually. And just please repeat after me.
I'd like to let you know where I am.
Okay.
I am at home, alone. This is Representative-elect Ann Kopp. Here is my flag, Appeal to Heaven, and the Constitution, New Hampshire, Article 85. Go ahead, Governor.
Great. Thank you so much, Ann. So please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ann Kopp,
Please state your town.
of Derry, New Hampshire,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear faith and true allegiance
that I will bear faith and true allegiance
to the United States of America
to the United States of America
and the state of New Hampshire,
and the state of New Hampshire.
and will support the constitutions thereof,
I will support the constitutions thereof,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name.
I, Ann Kopp,
Do solemnly and sincerely
do solemnly and sincerely
swear and affirm.
Didn't hear that, Governor.
Swear and affirm
Swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all duties incumbent upon me
all the the duties incumbent upon me
as state representative
as state representative
according
of
to
New
the
Hampshire,
best of my abilities,
according to the best of my ability.
agreeably to the rules and regulations,
I'm sorry, Governor, you broke up.
agreeably to the rules and regulations
Agreeably to the rules and regulations
of this Constitution
of this Constitution
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Great. Moving on, we have some items to begin our regular meeting. We do have our the meeting minutes from our January 7th, 2020 meeting. So could I begin by having a motion to accept the meeting minutes from January 7th, 2020? Thank you, Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or changes to the meeting minutes request? Okay, seeing no requests or changes to the meeting minutes, all in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Janet. Any opposed? And that's an aye from Janet Stevens. Thank you, Councilor Stevens. With that, the meeting minutes are approved. Next, from the office of the Secretary of State, we have our civil commissions. So we don't have any civil commissions to accept today. Is that right? We just have nominations? Okay. Great. Are there any nominations to place on the civil commissions? Yeah, we'll get the... any nominations on the list of civil commissions for the Secretary of State? Okay, seeing no nominations, the matter of civil commissions from the Secretary of State's office is concluded. Next up, we have our resignations. So we have 4 resignations to accept today. From the Board of Home Inspectors, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of John Bossi of Tilton?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Did we make a motion on the civil commissioners law prior to that?
Only if we accept them. We're not accepting any. We weren't accepting the list this week because there wasn't a list put in last week. Is that right? Correct. So we're kind of starting with the new list this week. We'll make the motion to accept next week.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of go from there. Thank you. I do the double take too. Any discussion on Mr. Bossi of Tilton? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Ms. Stevens?
Aye.
Thank you, Janet. That's an aye, and with that, the resignation is accepted. From the Circuit Court, as a justice, can I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Edwin Kelly of Concord?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Governor, did he reach the mandatory age, or is it he just resigned early?
That's a great question. Did he actually hit the age? I thought he did.
He did, well, he's about to.
Yeah, he's about to.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry? March 1st.
Yeah.
He would hit the age. So yeah, he's right. He's good.
Great. Thank you.
Any other discussion on Judge Kelly? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the resignation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor.
Aye.
That's an aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resignation is accepted. As a circuit court, from the Circuit Court, could I please have the motion to accept the resignation of Judge Lucinda Sadler of Bow?
So,
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
that's the same question, Governor?
Great question.
Yeah.
She's retiring early.
She's retiring a little early.
She's retired.
Yeah,
Okay.
she didn't. She's not very good. Any further discussion? Well, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the resignation is accepted. From the Electricians Board, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Jack Ruby of Londonderry?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor Stevens? Thank you for that.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, the resignation of Jack is accepted. And that concludes the resignations for this meeting. For confirmations, we only have one today. Could I please have a motion to confirm Gordon McDonald of Deering as the Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Warrington, please.
I have a statement.
Sure.
Selecting Supreme Court justices is one of the most important responsibilities of the Executive Council. The Executive Council has a responsibility to ensure it appoints well-qualified justices who will best serve the people of New Hampshire. The public depends on us to do this. After hearing testimony yesterday and asking my own questions of Attorney General McDonald, I have substantial concerns about this nomination. Yesterday's testimony and questioning raised serious questions about Gordon MacDonald's commitment to the protection of our fundamental rights, including reproductive rights and voting rights, at a time when they are clearly threatened. Gordon MacDonald would be the first Chief Justice in a century to be appointed with no judicial experience. A judicial record provides insight into how a judge will approach cases, including cases concerning the protection of our constitutional rights. Without a judicial record, we must rely on his responses to questioning his past activities and what he has done in past positions, including his decisions as Attorney General, to understand his approach. Unfortunately, his decisions as Attorney General to support a law to divert taxpayer dollars to religious schools, his expenditure of hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to defend unconstitutional restrictions on voting, and his dismissal without investigation of complaints of voter suppression by his prior client suggest he is incapable of meeting his obligation of setting aside his personal political beliefs as required. Gordon MacDonald described a judicial philosophy wherein he interprets the Constitution based on the meaning of the words at the time they were written. Other conservative justices adopt standards which envision the Constitution to be a living, breathing document, which when written left outstanding questions that the framers left to be resolved another day. I strongly believe we need a judiciary prepared to face the challenges of the day: racial injustice, political division, gender inequality. These are issues that will best be addressed by a judiciary that does not bind itself to rigid, robotic computations, but one that is true to both the words of our Constitution and to the complexities of factual considerations in a changing world. To be clear, this is not a political statement. Many moderately conservative judges embrace similar judicial philosophy. Gordon MacDonald is not one of them. And while I respect him, his legal scholarship, and his integrity, I think the court led by Gordon MacDonald will exacerbate rather than heal the wounds of division and injustice in our state. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? By Councilor Tench.
Just for the public's standpoint, I'd just like to kind of give an overview of yesterday's public hearing.
And thank you, by the way. I don't mean to interrupt, but I know in like 7 hours. I mean,
7.5.
well, you all did a great job, I think, and everyone who went through the process, you know, some of it had to be done virtually. I think we were listening, and I thought you all did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Governor. And so for everyone, the public hearing was 7.5 hours. It was held at the Department of Transportation. And the people were to allow to testify in person or via conference call. The staff was great. State police was great. Everyone was great. The public was great. And obviously, I want to commend Councilor Whaler for conducting a very good hearing, one that was respectful to the public and to all concerns that were involved at the time. Some of the notable witnesses were Chief Judge of the United States, Lana McCaffrey, Court for the District of New Hampshire, former U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte, former Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court, John Broderick, and also former Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court, Robert Lynn. Members of the public came in and testified were from all different sectors of life, had for and against as far as their
their testimony. Each executive counselor asked their questions, and then the public joined in at that point. The testimony really ranged from constitutional issues with regards to emergency orders, family court system, election law, reproductive rights, court rulings, victims' rights, and many other topics. This was an opportunity for the public to weigh on this critical nomination, and I think New Hampshire proved itself well in all the participants and everybody who was involved.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion?
Yes, Governor.
Oh, Councilor Whittley?
Governor, I'd like to start by saying that, Gordon, in my 32 years at the State House, or in and out of the State House, I haven't seen an Attorney General work any harder than Gordon MacDonald. I'd also like to say in the last 4 years that I've known with him and worked with him closely, that he has never lied to me. That's a big deal with me. Never told me false information. And that is a characteristic I would want to see in a Supreme Court justice. Working with Gordon on the council and off the council, he's always been willing to take my calls and discuss the issues. We haven't always agreed, but I will say that when we're discussing Second Amendment issues, that he has his head clearly wrapped around the Second Amendment of the Constitution, and he has, for instance, helped Fish and Game know what their role is coming to the legislature talking about Second Amendment issues, or to be limited to their subject matter of Fish and Game. He has helped in innumerable ways when others have gotten out of line and not respected the Second Amendment. So he's good with me understanding the Constitution on the Second Amendment. I think it would be noteworthy to remember some of the things that the General has worked on, the lawsuit with Massachusetts overcharging tax for people who are working here in New Hampshire, to defend New Hampshire against Federal Attorney General William Barr trying to take down our lottery through interstate supposed rules. And he's worked hard on limiting robocalls. He's had to deal with conduct issues at St. Paul's School. And those are just some of the examples of the big issues that he has tackled. As far as election integrity, I think it's worthy to note that he has prosecuted and won 5 cases in 2019, and there are a few more cases that are open and being prosecuted now in the area of voter fraud. One of my biggest concerns is how he handled the emergency orders. And we had a very long conversation about that and some technical bantering back and forth yesterday about what the standard can be concerning constitutional orders. And there's been a Supreme Court decision out of Washington as we hash through this COVID mess that said that the level of constitutional scrutiny when deciding what orders are legal and not must be normal scrutiny. And I know that's legal jargon, but normal means the highest. It means you must give it the highest level of scrutiny, whether there's an emergency going on or not. And basically, I believe, and I am going to vote for him today because I believe that he said he would not suspend the Constitution and he would follow the direction of the United States Supreme Court. So it's going to be my pleasure to vote for Gordon to be our next Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion?
Governor, I was here the last time he was before us. I really don't have anything more to say other than spending another 18 months with him. I understand his integrity. I understand he's a man of his word. And when you can get the Democrats that came before us yesterday, or before this council and me on the phone, to listen to the testimony that they gave, like Judge Broderick, who doesn't give out an awful lot of accolades, it was impressive. I think that if certainly the last 10 months didn't involve this COVID virus, I think that we would have had a lot less speakers. But I supported him 19 months ago, and there's no reason for me not to support him today.
Thank you. Councilor Stevens, I think you might have your hand raised. Is your mic open?
Yes, thank you. I would like to thank staff for an exemplary job yesterday, and I am incredibly proud to have been part of yesterday's hearing. We have a challenge in front of us, and no fault of the governor or this executive council. We have an issue Superior and Circuit Courts with the backlog ranging from 180 to 188 cases in the Superior Court, along with 250 in the Circuit Court, the Criminal Division. And we know that more is expected of our Superior Court judges. Their casework right now is in excess of 800, and on average they should have 680. So I'm proud of the process yesterday, and I know that I have the utmost confidence that we can proceed as a council to move forward on vacancies as well in the Superior and Circuit Court. And I believe that Gordon will do an exemplary job leading us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Kenny?
Thank you, Governor. I want to support Attorney General Gordon MacDonald as Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court, not because he's a perfect human being, not because our court system is a perfect system of justice, but I think Gordon's impartiality, his career, his exemplary ability to solve problems and to do what he thinks is right. I just want to point out in general that the State Supreme Court itself has done a remarkable job the last year and a half. I had a question that was sent over to the State Supreme Court about the workload and the impact and so forth, and I got some answers back that since Chief Justice Lane's retirement in August 2019, the Supreme Court has had 968 new cases filed. It has dispensed 974 cases, and has heard oral arguments in 150 cases. In that, the Chief Justice is going to have to get in there. They're going to have, every person within the court system, from circuit to superior to the State Supreme Court, that they're going to have to work with. There's a $100 million budget. If he thinks the Attorney General office was busy, get ready for your new assignment, because there is a lot of work to be done within our court system, and obviously at the State Supreme Court level. I just bring that out because I think his experience at the Attorney General's level, with all the $43 million budget, with all the staff and the sections and all the cases that he's had to deal with, prepares him to be a manager of the State Supreme Court. And obviously, his leadership will be, well used there. So it's been a year and a half, Governor. This is history. The last time we had the longest holdover, I think it was 11 months, and it was 1801. So this is a year and a half. And I think it's time to move on with one of our citizens here in New Hampshire, one who's exemplified true character, a legal mind, and the willingness to work with people to help serve the people in New Hampshire in the best way that he knows how. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Okay. Well, hearing none, All in favor of Gordon MacDonald as the Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, so we have 4 ayes and 1 opposed, and with that, Mr. MacDonald is confirmed. That is the only confirmation that we have for today. Moving on, we do have a list of nominations.
Where's Gordon? Is he here?
He may, I think he's coming a little later. He might be coming a little bit closer. So, yeah. Bear with me. Chill with that. Okay, sorry about that. A few nominations to read into the record, so bear with me. To the Board of Home Inspectors, I nominate Nicholas Jett of Brookline and James Gray of Derrick. To the Board of Mental Health Practice, I nominate Christina Grivet of Holderness and Kerry Field of Hooksett. To the Board of Veterinary Medicine, I nominate Claire Timbus of Dunbar. To the Business Finance Authority Board of Directors, I nominate Charles Withy of Hampton. To the Community Development Finance Authority Board of Directors, I nominate Peter Reno of Hampton. To the Compensation Appeals Board, I nominate Hamilton Kranz of Dover and Eric Bernard of Manchester. To the Electricians Board, I nominate Dexter Robley of Portsmouth. To the Fire Standards Training Commission, I nominate Ronald Sebastian of Derry. To the Mechanical Licensing Board, I nominate Paul Perry Jr. of Derry. To the Medical Review Subcommittee, I nominate Joan Barthel of Lyme. To the New Hampshire Real Estate Commission, I nominate Matthew Cabana of Temple. To the Site Evaluation Committee, I nominate Susan Dufrey of Concord. To the State Board of Education, I nominate Ryan Terrell of Nashua and Richard Sala of Dorchester. To the State Historical Resources Council, I nominate Andrew Garthwaite of Lebanon and Aaron Hammerstedt of Harrisville, and also Tim Sappington of Random, all 3 of those for the State Historical Resources Council. And with that concludes today's nominations. Bear with me. We discovered within the first 2 hours, over 120,000 people have registered for the vaccine. That's 1,000 a minute. That's pretty incredible. That's why Perry Plummer is not with us during this today. He's really busy making sure that that system's working. So that's really phenomenal. So moving on, we can move to our consent calendar agenda. And ask for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or request to remove items for further discussion revolving items on the consent calendar?
Governor, question please?
Yes, Councilor Stevens.
It's on item 1A. It may seem insignificant, but I have a question procedurally. The membership rate is $75,000 for this professional association based on revenue in excess of $125 million, and we just about hit that metric this year. So if we do not hit $25 million, that amount should be lowered, correct?
I'm not sure. I think Commissioner Sheehan is with us today, so I'll ask the Commissioner to come up to address this. And bear with me before you. Any other items, just so we can note them? Okay, yeah, so I'll ask the Commissioner to come up and
Would
discuss
you like to
that.
vote on the calendar and also address that item or speak now?
So let's do this. To be clear, could I have a motion to remove item, I have the ability. I will remove item 1A from the agenda. I'll ask for a motion to adopt the consent calendar agenda as presented with the exception of item 1A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the consent calendar agenda with the exception of item 1A, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that's an aye from Councilor Stevens, so those items are approved. Could I now have a motion to adopt consent calendar agenda item 1A?
So moved.
Second.
So motion and a second. I know we have a question on that item, so I'll ask the Commissioner to step forward to address item 1. Thank you.
Good morning, Governor. Good morning, Councilors. For the record, Victoria Sheets, Commissioner at COC. Councilor Stevens, you are correct. The amount that we pay in our membership fee does vary depending on the revenue. And so we are expecting to pay a little less next year based on where our revenue numbers are currently trending.
Wonderful, thank you. Because, again, it goes from, I think, 75,000 to 25,000, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on item 1A? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of consent calendar agenda item 1A, please signify by saying aye. Councilor Stevens, that's an aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, consent calendar agenda item 1A is approved. That concludes our consent calendar. So moving on to our regular agenda, the first, sorry, let me take a quick pause here. Are we in for the meeting?
Yes, as agencies come up to do.
Okay, so I know we have a couple different presentations that we're going to, from agencies, so as the agencies come up to discuss their items, we'll kind of take them in turn as their agency items come up, as opposed to doing them all up front, if that's okay. Is that okay with you? Great. So first, item 6, because I know we'll have to talk about things from Health and Human Services, we'll deal with that next. But item 6 is from the Business Finance Authority. So bear with me. If I may, could we first start with a motion to adopt agenda item 6 from the Business Finance Authority?
So moved.
Okay.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. So before we get started, we're going to ask a member, I think James Wallace from the Business Finance Authority is here. I'm going to ask him to come up and speak on this item. We're going to have a discussion amongst the councilors, and then we will open it up for the public hearing aspect of this item. And at that time, anyone joining from the public, specifically over the phone, can press 5 star to virtually raise their hand. So we have a motion and a second on item 6. Good morning, Mr. Wallace, how are you?
Good morning.
Good. You wanted to start with a little background on this item, and then we'll open up for questions from the council.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm Director Key Wallace from the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority, joined by our Senior Credit Officer, Jeremy Spinizzi. The item before you today is a request to increase an existing loan to an existing borrower from the Business Finance Authority. The borrower is the Stratford County Economic Development Corporation. They're a non-profit organization that does small business lending and advisory services, mostly in and around Stratford County. They've been around for about 30 years. They work with banks to help provide that little missing piece of a loan that the bank can't quite do all of it. They do a great job. They've helped create and retain, they say, over 16,000 jobs in their region over the decades. Very effective organization. So how it works with the BFA and our relationship with them is like we do with most of the regional development corporations in the counties around the state, is there's a line of credit available to BFA where when they want to make a loan to a local business, they can borrow money from the BFA and take that money and lend it to that company. And so that works really well because the BFA is secured not just by the loan that they are making, but by the portfolio of the organization. And they actually have to pledge their portfolio assets above a certain ratio to make sure the BFA's position is always well secured. That system's worked very well for a long time. We've never had a loss. This group has a 100% on-time repayment rate. Fantastic organization. This is not a state guaranteed loan, but it's something that has a lot of impact, and the BFA is happy to support.
Terrific. With that, do we have any questions from any of the executive councilors? I'll start with Councilor Kenny.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Governor. So you just point out kind of an operative word, which is there's no liability for the state when it comes to this guaranteed credit extension.
Yes, Councilor, that's right. There's no state guarantees attached to this. There's no liability to the state.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, in this COVID-19 environment, where there has been a slowdown in the business community, we're extending credit to this organization to work, obviously, within the business community. how has COVID-19 slowed down or maybe expedited the lending process?
Yeah, thank you, Councilor. That's a big question. You're totally right. The business community, like many, has been really rocked by COVID. In the lending world, what we've seen is a real tightening of credit by bank lenders. They're more cautious than they were before, with the uncertainties in the outlook, and that's actually creating increased demand for groups like SEDC and other kind of nonprofit to provide relief, whether it's loans or other support, and same with the BFA. So we're getting a lot of requests. I think we've been to, I don't know how many executive council meetings in a row for a while now, but it's a very busy time. I will say, actually, somewhat surprisingly, but in an encouraging way, the resiliency of some of these small businesses is really astounding. They're finding ways to hang in there. They're getting support from whether it's federal programs like PPP or the funds that are available through the Gopher initiatives are really helping people kind of stay in the fight. And SEDC's portfolio performance, which is something we watch carefully, has actually held up pretty well. They provided a lot of flexibility, loan forbearance, interest-only periods, just to kind of get people over the hump, as a lot of folks did. But yeah, things are actually surprisingly okay in that portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion, Councilwoman?
James, thank you, and thanks for our call earlier last week. And I just wondered if you could comment about the adequacy of the security that's securing these loans, as we had discussed earlier before the meeting.
Yes, Councilor. Yes, thank you. So, like most of the BFA products, if you will, there are collateral requirements to ensure that if there's a default, it doesn't result in an outsized loss for the BFA. This one's no different. In this case, every RDC, including this one, has to pledge collateral equal to or greater than at least 120% of the loan balance. So if there were $1 million out, they would need to have $1.2 million of collateral. SEDC substantially exceeds that. What's the current pledged?
So I believe we were just going over it yesterday. It's going to be around $4 million that's pledging.
Right. So that's $4 million today against a balance of 2.6. So any new loans that they make are also pledged. So he significantly exceeds the collateral.
Additional discussion from the council. Councilor Stevens, do you have any discussion or any questions?
Please, James, thank you so much for speaking with me earlier this week and answering the questions that I had. And just for clarification, the interest rate that SEDC charges to its members or constituents, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Councilor. So we don't prescribe what that lending organization needs to charge to its borrowers, but we know what they do charge, and they don't compete with banks, so they don't try and disrupt the private markets. That's not the BFA kind of policies. So they do the part of the deals the bank can't do, and they charge typically 1% or 2% more than the bank to compensate for the extra risk they're taking. So that varies based on market conditions, but a typical SEDC deal, you'll see deals, I would say 5%, 6%, 5.5%, depending. The bank might be 4, they might be 5. That's about the range.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Further discussion? Okay, hearing no further discussion, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item, please raise your hand by pressing 5* virtually on your phone. And we'll give that a minute, see if anyone comes in the queue. Mrs. Fallon on with us, can she do it?
Courtney's on.
Courtney? Hi.
Hopping with 211.
Courtney, do we have anyone raising their hand?
We do not.
Great. So seeing no request for participation from the public, I'll close the portion of the public hearing. And no further discussion from the councilors or from the councils. Thank you both very much. I would ask the Executive Council, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of item number 6, we will take a roll call on that item.
Council Kenny?
Yes.
Council Warmington?
Yes.
Council Stevens?
Yes.
Council Gaffney?
Yes,
Council Wheeler?
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, item 6 is approved.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Governor. Go Celtics, Councilor.
Moving on, we have items from the Department of Health and Human Services. I'd ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 7 and 8 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of the Commissioner.
second.
We have a motion and a second.
General discussion.
Yep, any discussion? Councilor Gadsden? I think the Commissioner is here.
I don't know if it involves her or if it involves you. I know that the program went well today with the COVID signups.
Yes.
Question I've been getting from an awful lot of seniors that are stay at home, can't get out. Doesn't matter if they register or not because they can't get to a facility. And what are we doing for them?
Yes. So our public health networks will be contracting either through their own vaccinating system or through a VNA to get the homebound people so that they can get vaccinated.
And when do we think we will have an answer for those folks who may be in their 90s? Specifically think of one,
That are homebound.
and are homebound.
The public health network should be in contact, they can reach out to them, to the public health network, or if they have a VNA service that are coming into their home, or they can just call 211 and we can get the arrangements made so that they can get their vaccination.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
211 is really for anything that isn't 65 and up, if it requires comorbidity or transportation issues, language barriers, whatever it might be. 211 is really one of the best ways, and the staff has been trained up to.
Yeah, we plan for our homebound seniors, and not just our seniors, young adults that have comorbidities that are homebound, so we do have a plan for that.
Great, thanks. Councilor Kenny.
Here on the spot, but first of all, I want to thank you for all the work that you do. It's quite extraordinary, so I appreciate your dedication and commitment. I do have a couple questions with the Public Health Network up north in the North Country.
Sure.
I've attended, one of their Zoom meetings just recently, and so they seem to have a lot of their kind of mobile clinics within kind of fire station locations because they were kind of vaccinating the first responders, if you will. Is there another plan for the larger audience? In other words, not going to use the same facilities, but are they going to use other places?
So right now we have 13 fixed sites to do public vaccination. We have offers and plans for dozens more. Right now our limiting factor is the amount of vaccine, with only getting, vaccinating between 12 and 17,000 depending on if you're just including the fixed sites or all people. Our limitation is our vaccination, and we could open 20 more sites, but we wouldn't have the vaccination to give them. So as the federal government ramps up the allocation to New Hampshire, we will start opening additional fixed sites, both up north in Manchester. And a lot of those are in partnership with our hospitals. A lot of our hospitals around the state are going to do man our fixed sites or do it in collaboration with the department, the National Guard, the local fire department, but they will be everywhere. We have toured everything from university campuses to local fire stations to private businesses that have offered their sites. So we have dozens more that we can set up as soon as we have additional vaccination.
My second question is really from a constituent, and I think yesterday you might have answered it on the news, but younger kind of daughter taking care of an older parent who's got health issues but does not want to transmit COVID, and she's the primary caretaker in the house. Typically under this kind of, group 1, group 2, or group B, she would be pushed off into later into the spring. But since she's taking care of her parent who's older with medical issues, is that person, are they eligible for the vaccine early?
Not in this phase. Who's eligible is the parent, right? Because that's the vulnerable person that we're trying to protect is the parent. So the older person will be eligible for vaccination.
The caregiver is not going, if they're in, let's say they're 40s, 50s, they're not going to be eligible because we're vaccinating the parent. The other side to that coin are vulnerable children who are not eligible for the vaccination. Kids under 16 cannot be vaccinated. Their caregivers are eligible for the vaccination to protect that child.
So in the example that I just gave, because you mentioned there's 2 series to this vaccination, since they have a primary caregiver and they live in the house and they don't want to transmit COVID if they were exposed to it, wouldn't it make sense to vaccinate them at the same time?
Well, they wouldn't be able to transmit COVID to a vaccinated adult.
Even in the first series?
After the second shot,
When does the second shot come in?
21 days.
21 days, so
Yes.
there's a gap in there.
There's a gap there. Yep.
So wouldn't it make sense to vaccinate, and I'm not sure that there's a lot of that population in the state, but wouldn't it make sense to vaccinate that caretaker?
So, I think that it makes sense to vaccinate a lot of people in the state, our essential workers, our adult caregivers. I think the issue is that it's not a decision on whether we can vaccinate the elderly and their caregivers. It's whether we can vaccinate the elderly or their caregivers, because we don't have enough vaccination in this round to do both.
Okay.
So if we have the choice, we have to pick the vulnerable adult.
So the vulnerable adult has a gap of 21 days where they're still vulnerable, even though they've received their first shot.
Yes, it's 21 days between the first. Now, they do get some protection out of the first shot, and we have discovered that, not in Hampshire, but globally we've discovered that there is some protection that comes out of the first shot, but there is still that gap. But that gap is no different than what they've experienced for the last year without any vaccination at all. But, the real issue here is that we don't have enough vaccination to do everybody. We've had this discussion. I've gotten hundreds of phone calls and emails from our educators, from wastewater treatment workers, sanitation workers, caregivers saying we're essential employees. We should get vaccinated first. Can you add us to 1B? We can't add anybody else to 1B. So if we added someone to 1B, they will be getting the vaccination before our elderly and before our medically compromised citizens. And that's the decision point. It's not and, it's or. And we can't put anybody before our vulnerable citizens.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to confirm, you've made those decisions in consultation with Dr. Chan and public health guidance, and those are the decisions?
It is the team discussion, yes, every day.
And you and I spoke last week about the vaccine being the limiting factor, and that I know you're busy, and I don't mean this to put anything else on your plate, but that you thought the dashboard would be up. If it's up, I apologize, I was busy yesterday, but I'm just wondering about how many doses received, how many have been actually in the arm given, and is the dashboard up?
I'll have to check on whether the dashboard is live or not. I'm not positive on that, but we do put out publicly every Friday all of those numbers that you just asked. So this afternoon when we release our daily report, you will see all of those numbers, how many vaccinations we've distributed, how many have actually gone into the arms, what the percentage, how many second doses we've given. So all of that information is released every Friday and will be released every day once the dashboard's up. I think, it's a workload issue. Today, we have to make live our registration portal, which was an extremely heavy lift because we knew there would be hundreds of thousands of people trying to get registrations today, and we were correct. Like the governor said, I think as of 10 a.m. there's 123,000 people registered to get their vaccination. Of those, 90,000 were registered, and 33,000 added their spouse, which is something that we had talked about for this last 48 hours and had to make a change very quickly. So I'm sure that dashboard is going to be live soon. I'm sure it got pushed back to make today successul.
Can you give us a preview?
Not off the top of my head. The numbers I have in my forefront right now is registrations this morning.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for even asking.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I do have a question about number 7, but
Of course.
I'll hold that until the
Okay,
conversation.
yeah, so if there's an additional conversation on vaccine, if folks have any other questions on the vaccine.
So I do have a question, Governor, and if someone is having problems entering their data into this registry. Where should they go besides me?
Call 211. We've staffed up. We have several hundred people right now answering the phone. We have our National Guard. We have over 300 state employees that have left their normal duties to go and answer the calls and do these registrations, because a lot of the people over the age of 65, I won't say a lot, several people over the age of 65 don't have access to internet and email. So we stood up the call center to be able to do that, and they can register them right there on 211. So if they have questions at all, I would say between today is probably not the best day if you just have general questions, because there is definitely a backlog of calls coming in if they're just general questions. If they're trying to register, absolutely 211 today, and they'll be able to get an appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, one question. Thank you, Commissioner. Do we track the refusal rate among like the healthcare workers before we added into this group? Do we, was the first batch, the quantity of the first batch of vaccine, was that enough to vaccinate all healthcare workers, or was there extra beside that? So, and are we tracking a refusal rate?
So
we moved into another group, so
we will roll anything left over in 1A into 1B and further down the line. Uptake is not 100%. It never will be 100% amongst any group. So although we plan and allocate for 100%, as we get closer to the end of that phase, we roll the extras into the next phase and open up more appointments for other people.
So what percentage, have that in the healthcare workers are taking the vaccine?
We don't have solid numbers yet. It is, what I'm hearing from hospitals and long-term care facilities, it ranges from about 60 to 80%. What we found is that the uptake was lower during the first clinic, and then the people that were leading the charge, let's say, went through a week and didn't have side effects from the vaccine, so then additional people came forward. So every week we have additional people coming forward saying, I didn't want to get it 3 weeks ago, but I want to get it today. Okay. So that's why we don't have solid numbers yet, because we still have those people coming forward.
All right, very good. Thank you for your answer.
Any further discussion? Let's just stick on the vaccines for now, if we could. Great. Okay, well, let's move on to item 7, if we could. I think Councilwoman has a question.
I just have one question on 7, and it's on the bottom of page 2, basically, transfer related to juvenile field services.
And I'm going to acknowledge Karen Rounds, who is the CFO, who does that transfer. She is on the line to answer that question.
Karen, are you with us? I think it was you were a minute to raise your hand. Hi, Karen.
Good morning, Governor and Council.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Karen.
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good.
Hi, Karen. This is Cindy Warmington. I'm just inquiring about the item on the bottom of Appendix B, page 2, the juvenile field services. And it says here, due to vacancies at the Sununu Center, that the juvenile probation and parole officers are working increased overtime to assist. So I'm just wondering, are they working then inside the Sununu Center? How are they assisting?
Yes, they are. And Director Ripson can probably speak more specifically to details, but yes, they do provide shifts at the center itself for overtime.
So are these being accounted for then as expenditures of juvenile probation and parole officers, or expenditures of the Sununu Center?
Because they are employees of juvenile justice, we show that overtime in their budget, but those are expenditures certainly related to FYOC.
So how does that square with the requirement that funds can't be transferred into Sununu Center without approval?
Well, we're not actually transferring funds into FYSC for approval. They're working at the center, yes, but the transfer itself in the authorization document also does have the required FYSC language as far far as transfers, so I believe from a statutory perspective, we have to represent it as that as well.
Okay. And this was, as written, it was approved by Fiscal?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further discussion on either of these items? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of items 7 and 8, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
Thank you. And is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none opposed, items 7 and 8 are approved. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda item 9 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Medicaid Services.
So,
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on item 9? You have a question, Councilor?
I do.
Yep, we do have one question.
If I can just ask to get Henry Littman teed up,
Yeah.
answer these questions.
Sure, we'll get Henry on the line. Good morning, Henry. Are you with us? One minute.
Hey, good morning, Governor, the council. I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
We can, absolutely. Go ahead, Councilor.
Great, thank you.
thank you. Hello, Henry. This is Councilor Warmington. I wondered, first of all, thank you for the hours of time you spent with me over the last month. Can you explain in this contract, the deletion of the special needs long-term care and housing coordinator position?
Yes, so in looking at the COVID situation and what is able to be done and the timing of standing up other housing services, it was felt that in this period of time, in this contract, that we would not be receiving a return on investment with respect to housing coordinators. We are actively, within the managed care program itself, we are actively working on housing issues within the department, and including supportive housing, which would be some Medicaid expenditures. But I think in terms of what the operating environment of COVID allows for, and the fact that some of the programming to stand up that will support it is not there, that the ROI, return on investment, if you will, in the contract wasn't there in this period.
So you were, as a result of these deletions, able to reduce the administrative services cost for the contract?
Yes.
Do you have a different strategy or a long-term strategy for addressing these needs? Would you expect to put them back in a subsequent amendment, or do you have a different strategy for this?
I think that's something that, in terms of working within the department and in terms of how the transitional and supportive housing gets further stood up, I think that's probably could potentially be considered in Amendment 6, but probably more likely in an Amendment 7 timeframe.
I see that you've added an incentive to participate in a local care management pilot program, and that now the local care management obligation is optional. Can you talk about whether the managed care organizations have indicated they're going to participate in the pilot program, and also why you made the care management optional?
Sure. If I could start with the latter point. Again, I think COVID has had an impact on standing up the care management components of the contract, and in terms of what actual experience has shown us in terms of the percentage of individuals that will be in care management, that we made this adjustment. We are also working on, again, some longer-term plans here in terms of what care management should look like given experience. And I think that with respect to the pilot, that that is going in Manchester, that it's in a more advanced state. We'd like to continue to learn from that in this phase to help inform latter phases. And I think, again, it's in terms of standing up in this environment, and then also the cost of efficiency of a more normative level of care management is why we made that decision in this phase. Again, I think in future periods, and probably not the next one, is I think that we would be, looking at our care management strategy overall as a department and seeing how we can produce the longer term ROI. The issue with care management, I would add, is that, while the NCOs have been, if you will, an economic incentive and interest in a contract period, whereas a beneficiary may be with the department in many programs for over periods of time. We're trying to discern what's the best balance to manage long-run costs as opposed to just contract period costs.
I've had people contact me about the commitment to local care management. Do overall, understanding that there's problems with COVID, but overall, do you have a commitment to local care management?
I believe that the department understands that, and particularly I think COVID has shown that it's important for community engagement. I guess it's how that community engagement comes into play that I think there's an opportunity to refine what we originally contracted for and where we'd like to go next. And I think in terms of where we go next, in part, there needs to be the time and attention that just isn't available given dealing with all the COVID issues that the department's having to deal with at the moment. And the need for short-term cost savings given the budget challenges that we have.
So care coordination from the department's point of view is a pivotal service that needs to be provided to our citizens, not in the short term but in the long term. So we look at care coordination and case management over a decade, right? You have a whole family that may touch 3, 4, 5 different areas of the department, and we don't want them to have 3 or 4 or 5 different case managers. So what the department has committed to doing is looking at the care coordination case management structure and figuring out which is the best way to deliver that on a regional level. So, or even down to a community level. So that is one of the strategies we're embarking on, figuring out how do we do this really well to serve the clients of Medicaid. And right now, I think COVID definitely puts up barriers, but if we're not getting the return on our investment by putting the dollars into the MCO contract, we need to step back and figure out how the department can do it better.
Overall, I just want to say, I think you've done a really excellent job of balancing all of the interests here, making sure that we have 3 viable MCOs in the state. I know that's a difficult challenge, maintaining an adequate provider network, making sure we're serving all our beneficiaries, and also, the waiver of MOE. I mean, the risk corridors that you've negotiated. I really think that you've done an excellent job here.
Thank you.
Further discussion on item 9.
Please. Hi, Commissioner, it's Councilor Stevens. Henry, could you discuss the performance-based auto assignment and the MTM withholding and incentive program? How is that structured?
Sure. The auto assignment is a tool that can be used in a variety of ways. In this contract, what we're trying to do is focus in on this contract period to see what difference we can make in with MCO support in managing the wait list for psychiatric admissions, and for trying to provide an incentive for the NCOs to, on a relative basis, to obtain additional new members. And so we have looked at auto assignment as a way to help stand up the new entrant to begin with, and now we're looking at a phase in terms of, rather than just looking at using penalties, trying to zero in on opportunities where MCOs can differentiate themselves. It's also being used on withhold metrics in terms of areas where they're looking to improve quality metrics within the contract. That I think we're looking at stepping into this in this particular contract with about 5,000 members of potential attribution. We want to see how that works in terms of helping further align incentives and look at more of a reward versus penalty on some key metrics.
And secondly, the failure to timely process 98% of clean, complete provider credentialing. And I know that's an issue with credentialing with behavioral health care providers, and it often seems capricious to, again, our providers. The sanction is $1,000. Can we discuss that further?
Sure. We had a penalty that when for this particular purpose, that when we had just one instance of a failure to meet that standard, that led to basically an unapplicable penalty in terms of that it was significant because it was applied on a daily basis. I think there are some circumstances where credentialing, there are some back and forth issues that might occur. I think that the standard is high enough with the penalty to bring it to the MCO's attention to resolve it. I just felt that based on our early experience with it, that it was just disproportionate to the issue that arose, and so that's why we're making that change, and in part to just in terms of the overall negotiation to balance out the administrative adjustment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Now, is there any other discussion on item number 9? Okay, Councilor. Okay. I tell you, I wasn't able to reach that. I was like, wow, let's just move right along.
Yes, well, you know, I think that if you remember when we had this previous discussion, I was the only councilor who voted against the contracts, because I didn't think we were being treated fairly for the cost. Henry, when's the next time they can come forward and give us back some more money?
So on the prior contract, Amendment 3, we're working, I think before by about February, we'll have the data for enough claim run out to look at Amendment 3 for the period that ended June of 20. There's the risk corridor settlement there. We believe that there will be one in favor to the state, but we obviously have to wait for adequate claims run out. In terms of this contract, the savings will accrue as we start to pay the new capitation rates. And in addition, should the capitation rates end up being more than what is proposed here, 90.4% medical loss ratio, that they should do better than 3.5%, better than what we had targeted. That 100% of those expenditures would come back to the state. If it was between 1.5 and less than 3.5%, 50% of those expenditures would come back to the state. So that's what I'm referring to here as the risk corridor.
Well, the risk corridor.
Thank you for the question.
The risk corridor, as I see it, one of these companies made $500 million profit last year. Am I correct in saying that?
You're correct in that one of the MCOs, but that's their whole national footprint that made that. The maximum profit potential of all MCOs in this contract is, as currently configured, is just under 46 million for all three MCOs.
So how are we getting back 128 million?
So there's really three major components. One is the price limitation reduction of 128 million. The first major component is that, if you remember, the large increase in the price limitation to begin with in Amendment 4 was related to the public health emergency and the large increase expected in enrollment. That enrollment went from roughly about 176,000 before the public health emergency to where we forecasted an average of 215,000. The average that we're now forecasting is about 208. Today we stand over 213,000, but obviously on an average basis, because New Hampshire's unemployment in particular, I think, recovered faster, while the increase is very significant, over 35% in the Granite Advantage program, as an example, it's a bit better than what we had forecasted. And so that in the prior contract, over 50% of the price limitation increase was related to that. The other two major components are the COVID adjustment, and that is favorable to the state, almost $31 million. And that was based on originally an Amendment 4. We had thought that it was possible that the public health emergency would wind down and that some of the services that had been deferred would come back in this contract period. As you recall, we negotiated and CMS allowed us to do a retroactive rate refresh and look at the first quarter of this experience. Based on looking at that, that's how we were able to reduce the contract by another almost $31 million. We had forecast originally that we might see a 1.2% increase in spending as a result of the deferred care. In fact, we didn't see that, so we're able to take that back, plus we saw a little bit less, and so that's where we come up with the 31 million. The second major component is the a little over $17 million in administrative adjustments. Again, there are a lot of good things in the original managed care contract that have been impacted by what we can do in this period. And we reduced the administrative expenditures for the second half of the year by $17 million. And whereas the original contract, which had a lot built into it to work on care management and the like, we were coming in at the 75th percentile. This second half is at the 33rd percentile. So, and that's the third major component. Also in this, working the other way though, is the additional investment that the legislature approved for the 3.1% provider rate increase, which is in this contract, and some additional money put into the contract in both mental health and for children's hospital use.
I forgot what my question was.
Happy day.
Can we get shorter answers, please?
It's big numbers.
I think the last time we talked about these contracts, I said that people weren't going to use the services because of the COVID.
Yes.
And that's exactly true. And I don't know
To
what
an extent, sorry to interrupt.
I don't know to what extent anybody thinks that folks are going to go back into the hospital to do procedures with this epidemic still running around. Now, I know that we had 100 and some odd thousand people sign up this morning, but we aren't getting shots at 100 and some odd thousand people's arms in the next 60 days. Because I don't know if we're going to have the...
We will.
We will.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll just remember that and ask that question at a later date. But again, I look at these numbers and it's kind of like when you get a credit, and I think I went over this with you yesterday, and I'm still waiting for some data that you were supposed to send. kind of like when you get a credit card bill and they tell you it's $107 and you pay them $147. That's basically what we're doing. When do we get the chance to work these numbers the other way? Instead of us getting money back because it's money, our money that they're giving us back, and we can pay them on the front. Okay, go ahead. Let me have that answer.
Thank you for the question. I guess first of all, I want to make sure that you did receive the material that sent yesterday, but in that set of materials, there's a chart in figure 5 that shows the monthly expenditure by major expense categories. So there's been variability month to month. The numbers compare 19 and 20, and I've provided them both on absolute dollars and on a per member per month basis. The analogy of the credit card doesn't quite hold here in the sense of, with respect to setting insurance rates, they don't look at what you spent in the current month, they look at what you spent in the past 2 years and looking at the current month. And so in terms of setting our rates, getting our actuary to be able to meet their certification requirements, and then also getting CMS to agree to our certification, that you just can't look at a few months at a time. There's a standard in terms of what you need to look at. The application of being able to go backwards like we are this year is not something that we typically maybe allow, but because of COVID they are. And then the risk corridors, in case our predictions on COVID are not correct in terms of utilization. We also have the risk corridor protection, which limits what additional profitability there would be in the contract. But that's, I guess, the answer is that it's, while I fully appreciate the credit card analogy, it's not completely the same situation because of the standards in terms of qualifying our rate submission to CMS.
Did anybody ask them if they could do it for less?
Absolutely. This was, in terms of the COVID adjustment, I think, at the time, in the time that we started to negotiate this period, there were times when utilization in certain areas showed some increases among the plans, and certainly the administrative adjustment was something that was resisted quite a bit. So I definitely can answer that question, and believe me, when I'm working with the MCOs, I have this question in mind every time.
When did they start?
Well, in terms of the back and forth, they've brought in their own more current information. The MCOs have data that's a little bit ahead of us, not a lot, but a little bit ahead of us. They brought in their national experts to opine differently. They've shared that on the utilization side, on the administrative side. They brought forward what their expenditures were, and in terms of what we based our information on was a back and forth, but ultimately in terms of the COVID adjustment, it was more than what I think they thought they should have to accept. But because we have 3 MCOs, I think there's a greater incentive for there to be a contract to come into play, so that they have to have at least 2 in order to maintain a managed care program.
Maybe I didn't ask the question correctly. You got $128 million give back from them. What did they offer you the first time you sat down with them?
So, in terms of the enrollment piece, okay, the piece really is the number of people that we covered. That really doesn't require us to negotiate. That's just what it is. In terms of the enrollment, we have the, if you will, the inside aspect of enrollment and eligibility. With respect to the COVID adjustment, they were looking for more than what we were currently spending, and on the basis that the public health emergency and what was to potentially happen in the future and what was happening in other markets, that there'd be increased expenditures, not less. And looking at New Hampshire's experience, it's been different than some other states in terms of where we've seen the increases in costs or where we've seen the acuity occur. And so, as much as they wanted to rely on the national market on utilization, we really focused on what was happening in New Hampshire. On the administrative side, they came back, I don't have the exact dollar figure, but they were looking at something that was probably 10 to 15 points higher than where we landed.
So again, we've got 128 million. What did they offer you the first time you sat down?
As much as I'd like to give you an exact figure, I can't, because that's not how the negotiations sort of play out in terms of different pieces are worked. As much as I'd like to give you a direct answer there, I've given you as much as I can to be direct. I apologize.
Well, I still think you're about $70 million short of what they owe us, because we've got a lot of lives that are being lost. So they're not going to be getting services. And I don't know how they can compare us to anybody else in the country when it comes to what we give to our Medicaid population.
Right. Thank you for the questions. So in terms of the enrollment, the enrollment, sorry.
Can I sit with you the next time you negotiate with them?
I'm not sure what allows it.
I promise you I won't bring a baseball bat. Okay, I'll let anybody else that has comments.
Okay. Thank you. We have further discussion on item number 9? Councilor Kenny?
Hi, Henry, Director Levin, how are you today? Hey, I've been reached out by a constituent, and I don't know if you know the answer, because I'm not sure how well you know every part of this contract, but it has to do with non-emergency medical transportation under the Medicaid Care Management Service contract. And it seems as though the folks that are in this non-emergency medical situation where they need transportation, maybe they don't own a vehicle, they don't have a license, that they use a subcontractor, transportation contractor to provide that service. But what's happening, and it's supposed to be at the most reasonable cost, but in a lot of instances they're using Uber and Lyft to provide this service. And there seems to be, according to this constituent, an overabundance of use of these, these kind of gig entities. And I'm just wondering, there's a report that goes to, I believe, to DHHS at the end of the year that talks about the transportation services. Are you aware of this? Are we putting too much reliance, or these contractors, onto the transportation service that could be better utilized somewhere else?
Thank you for the question. So the non-emergency transportation, I'm actually, based on some other questions, have done a little work ahead of this meeting on that to help answer that. There are just under 100,000 rides provided in the fourth quarter of calendar year 2020. Only 1.3% of those rides were by either a Lyft Health or an Uber Health. There's not what's happening with ride sharing. Is that on occasion there are people who schedule something very last minute. That's one potential use of it. Another potential use of it is if a ride that's scheduled through the transportation broker doesn't show up, or that there's a significant, change in schedule that they're using, but it's on, we're tracking it every single day in terms of the ride share. There are other states that have started to use ride share as a component in their non-emergency medical transportation. We want to learn from other states' experience, though we wanted to just sort of dip our toe in it for those limited purposes. What I think is going on in the transportation world, that's probably worth a moment to step back on, is that I think, the state Medicaid program had historically been served by one broker, and I think in the interest of competitive bidding, there was an interest for the department to go out and do a re-procurement. Within the managed care contract, they also felt that it was worthwhile. Two of the MCOs also did re-procurement. So now in the state we have 3 transportation brokers. The state and one of the MCOs use one in common. There's the former incumbent is with one MCO, and there's another transportation provider. But we collect data on them every day. We meet with them weekly, and the issue that you raised of Uber or Lyft being used, it's not like using it on your cell phone. It has to be coordinated to the transportation broker, either the MCOs or the states.
No, I appreciate that answer. I'm glad to see you monitoring it and you're getting updates on it. Just the small transportation companies in the state, and obviously it's competitive to provide the service, but I hope that that we take in their interest into consideration.
Yes, I think that it is an adjustment, Counselor, in terms of rather than having to deal with one transportation broker, that they're now dealing with several, but in terms of balancing the economy and services, I think it's something that we'll learn from our experience, and hopefully we'll make some further adjustments down the road on it. But I think that, I think there was an interest to bring competition to this part of the program, and we did do that, and we've implemented new providers in June and September and October, so I'm sure we've been following the issues on a very individual patient basis, and where we have to make adjustments to make it work better, we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, to follow up on this subject matter, I asked you earlier in the week to get back to me on the rules or the conditions the state of New Hampshire put on the MCOs when they go out to get their transportation piece. And I haven't seen that yet. I'm a little disappointed that we got 4 huge contracts today on this agenda, and I don't have the answers to those questions. And apparently you have statistics that, unless I missed something in my email, you haven't shared with me yet when I checked it last night.
Counselor, I did send you 2 emails yesterday morning. There were 2 emails where I think each had 4 PDF attachments. I did get confirmation that it was with a delivery receipt that it came to you. What I shared with you is the statistics I just shared with you. I provided an organizational structure of how the transportation program is structured, because it may not be intuitively obvious, and gave you some policies, gave you an index of all the policies, the readiness tool that we use, and I expected, I would have liked to provide it to you earlier than yesterday morning, but it took me a little bit of time to pull it all together. I commit to you that after you review the materials, if there's more materials you want or want to meet with other folks, we'll do so. I take very seriously this issue, and want to work with you to make it as good as we can.
So we had talked about that the Lyft and Uber rides were limited to a certain percentage. Did that pan out? Is that what you found when you researched it?
Yeah, 1.3% out of the almost 100,000 rides that were provided in the last quarter can show, we have the statistics full up, I can show you one every single day by company as well.
But do we limit the MCOs on how much Uber and Lyft can be used? That was the question.
So it's understood that it's only supposed to be used for two key things. One is a rescue ride when a scheduled regular provider doesn't show up for whatever reason, or in the case of something that's a last-minute scheduled situation where there's not a driver that can respond. I think that we've been tracking this since its first use in June, and the statistics have borne out in that 1 to 1.5% range. And
was the answer there is no percentage?
we don't have a definitive percentage because we don't know how many rescues or late scheduled things are going to occur. That's because there's a lot of unpredictability in terms of what the scheduling is. I think what we're saying is if they're providing that ride, there ought to be a reason that it is, and that I can attest to you that it is a very small percentage of the total transportation that's going on.
All right, thank you for now.
You're welcome. And again, I want to answer all your questions and give you as much information as you'd like.
So any further discussion on item number 9? Councilor Gatsas.
Follow up on transportation.
Sure.
I think the last time that contract came before us, we were using a provider that was outside of the state. Is that correct?
Yes, all the brokers that are currently in the non-emergency transportation space in the program are not based in New Hampshire. They're based out of state. The transportation providers, if you will, say a taxi company or some other service, those are based in New Hampshire, and then they hire local people to provide a lot of the transportation.
So are you telling me that there are no providers in the state of New Hampshire that can provide this service?
So when we held open procurement, none did.
They don't bid on it. This has been a problem for years. We put it out to bid multiple times.
Just to clarify, this is the brokerage side of the house. This is not the actual people that are going to transport the patient. Those are all local provider. It's the company that organizes, arranges, and makes the appointments that we're talking about here.
And where are they located? Florida?
Go ahead, Henry.
So, sure. One is located in Connecticut, one is located in Florida, and one is located, I believe, in Missouri is where the other one is located.
Okay.
And these are companies that serve Medicaid programs in other states.
Additional questions on item 9?
Please, Henry, this is Councilor Stevens. I believe in March 19, the 3 MCOs were incentivized to track client satisfaction, I believe, in over 200 categories.
I think it's maybe even close to 300, Counselor. We have a website where we have all these different metrics. It's actually in the contract exhibit. Exhibit O is all the metrics, plus we also we're required to have an independent evaluator conduct surveys. The initials are EQRO, is that they also check not only beneficiary satisfaction surveys, but they also monitor to make sure that contractual compliance is in place, and it's a requirement of CMS that we have that type of contract.
So they were incentivized to do this tracking. However, if they're failing, I mean, I guess I should look at the data, but in the event that they're not meeting expectations, what happens?
So we have in the program, we have what we call the withhold incentive, which we talked a little bit about earlier, but there's approximately 2% of the capitation that is looked at to see if they perform against the metrics at a certain standard above the sort of a baseline standard, that there's a pool created that, if you will, the three MCOs compete to draw money from. And so that if, for example, the standard is the 50th percentile, we might create a structure where if they get the 75th percentile and they do it on more than one metric, that they would be able to tap into that pool. I think that's not extra money, that's all money that's in the contract, and is really just basically a back-end withhold of their capitation rate.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to, there's a lot to this, and I'd be happy to pull together more information on this for you.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Additional questions on item 9? Okay, seeing no additional discussion at this time, all in favor of item 9, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Stevens? That's an aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you, Councilor Gaston. So with that, item 9 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 10 and 11 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Economic and Housing Stability.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second on items 10 and 11. Any discussion on these items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And that's an aye from Councilor Stevens. Thank you. With that, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 12 through 15 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Children, Youth, and Families.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on these items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that's an aye from Councilor Stevens. The items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 16 from the Department of Health and Human Services for the Governor's Commission on Alcohol and Other Drugs.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on item 16?
Please.
Yes, Councilor Stevens.
Thank you. Can you clarify the payment to the provider of $250 per bed, whether they're being utilized or not per day? It's pretty clear in the language that was provided by Commissioner Myers back in 2019. So again, just seeking clarification on that.
I'm going to recognize Patrick Fox, who has the latest data on that question, Councilor.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor and council members. The dollar amount, so the idea behind this particular contract and for the bids is availability. And so I often revert to those who know me, know that I revert to the fact that my husband's a firefighter and that he needs to be, the fire station needs to be staffed 24/7 for availability to be able to respond to our crisis. That is the same situation with these particular beds. These are accessed 24/7 by the individuals and families who go through a doorway, one of the 9 doorways in the state. Of particular note is our relationship with Safe Station in Manchester, which has people come in 24/7, and they use the Nashua one in particular very often and are able to have people immediately transported there and who are able to get those respite beds. So we really need to pay for that availability, and we also understand that they have to staff as if all beds were full, regardless because of utilization.
Right, I'm all in support of that. However, it's just kind of nebulous because of the term, all-inclusive rate versus it was more clearly defined back in 19, utilized or not. But I'm all in favor of, paying whether they're used or not. I'd rather see them cured. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was there further discussion on that item 16? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of item 16, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Stevens?
Oh, no, I support, yes.
Great, thank you so much. With that, item 16 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 17 through 23. Please note that item 24 is not used. From the Department of Health and Human Services, from the Division of Behavioral Health.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on either of these items? Any concern? Councilor Wheeler?
Yeah, just a general question here, Governor. It seems like all these items are retroactive, and some of them are sole sourced. And then I have a particular question on number 23 after that. Why?
So these mostly are SOAR grant, and we weren't giving the award from the federal government until after the contracts expired. That is the short answer to all of these questions. The SOAR grant, probably due to COVID and a delay in things, we just didn't get the award from the federal government in time to execute the contracts before the end of the contracts.
Did they suspend services in the meantime, or they continue?
They continue, yeah, right.
And then I have a question on item 23, if I may go.
Please.
So it says this, the contract is can be renewed up to 4 years. Will that renewal come to the council?
I do believe so,
Think
yes.
so.
Yeah, every renewal.
Actually, is there any reason why the renewal on item 23 would not come to the Executive Council? Do you know?
Absolutely not. They will come back to the council. Anytime we exercise the renewal option, it comes back.
Thank you. Okay. Further discussion on any of these? Councilor Warmington?
Question on 17, is this the granted pathways that we've had performance problems with in the past, and so vehicles being resolved to your satisfaction?
Perhaps I'm going to let you address Councilor Warmington.
Can you hear that, Councilor? I'm sorry, Katya?
I could not hear it. Could someone restate it?
I'm sorry. I'm just wondering if this is the granted pathways that you've had performance problems with in the past, and if so, have they been addressed?
Thank you very much for the question. Granite Pathways had an issue, if you recall, that was specific to a particular program, and this program has actually been highly successful, and there has been national attention on this program, and I believe that Director Ripson, if he's not on the line, he would also attest to this because it is overseen by DCYF. But performance in this particular contract for this service has been excellent.
Thank you. I also have a question.
Please.
On item 21, Harbor Homes. At the December 18th meeting, there was discussion that Harbor Homes was not producing certain financial reports to the department. Is that still the case?
They've produced all financial reports that we've requested up through the end of November, which is what is required. So December's reports aren't due until the end of January. So all reports have been received. They are meeting all the metrics in their contract. We still audit them on a regular basis. There's no reason to believe that they can't fulfill the scope of this contract.
Thank you.
Yes? Sorry. Jen, just give me 1 second. I'm going to go to Councilor Kenny. I know Councilor Kenny has a question.
I think Councilor Warmington has one of my questions, but this particular contract is gotten a lot of attention in my district. I don't know why. Obviously, someone put up the fire
Number
alarm.
21?
Contract 21.
Okay.
So this is for the peer recovery support services and parenting education for pregnant women and parents in recovery. But I didn't know I got a lot of different calls from the various peer support centers around my district. Is there I didn't see it on page 2 if there's a breakout of these various centers around my district. How would I know that?
Patrick, do you have a breakout of the various centers in Councilor Kenny's district?
I do not have it right before me, so I will be pleased to follow up with you, what Kenny and that information to you specifically for your district.
No, I appreciate that. They just, maybe because of the discussion that went on, late last year, there's a lot of passion behind their request for me to make sure that I supported this contract, and I just want to know that, that I get back to them and just let them, put them at ease that if this contract passed today, that, they'll receive continued funding.
Okay. Councilor Gatsas.
Thank you, Governor. Another one thought I was going to let slip by. I'm hoping that we can get to the new councilors all the information that we received on Harbor Homes in the last council.
From the last council meeting or?
No, the last council total, the total financials.
Okay.
So that they can look at them, because I know this contract was supposed to go out to bid, if memory serves me correct. And that was the only reason why Councilor Prescott supported it the last time. This now extends it again. And it's not a small contract for the financial statements that it fulfills. And I would think that before you give us a new contract with new numbers, that we see the financial data to support the payment of those numbers.
Okay. I can get the Harbor Homes information that has been presented to the previous council to the new councilors.
I don't have a problem with that, but to approve this contract today, without knowing what the financial information is, to pay this contract back, because it's not been a secret, I voted against these contracts.
But we've been auditing Harbor Homes now for over a year. They are in compliance with everything that is in the scope of their contract for financial metrics. Our entire department has focused on this. They're meeting all of the metrics. There's no reason to believe that they cannot meet the scope of this contract.
Well, they're meeting those metrics because they're using dollars that they are receiving from other entities to pay for those contracts. Isn't that correct?
I don't have their finances in front of me, and I don't know that we provide as much scrutiny to every vendor that we do business with in that way, right? We set metrics, financial metrics, for them to meet, so that we know that they are financially solvable to fulfill the needs of this contract. And Harbor Homes, at least for the last several months, have submitted their financial documents and they've met the metrics.
Okay, I just wish that the councils could get it so that we could...
We can put a package together, maybe like in the last 18 months or,
We can do that.
Let's table it so that they can, let's table this item so that they can get the information and then make a decision based on what they see.
I think part of the issue with tabling of this, and if that's what the council chooses to do, is fine, is that they've been operating without payments since September of 2020 for this program because of the delay in the solar funding. So we're asking them to go additional time without funding for the services that they are providing.
Okay.
so is that, I'll take that as a motion to table. So we have a motion to table, is there a second?
Second.
Is a second, all in favor?
Is there a discussion or a table motion?
So all in favor of tabling item, just to be clear, we're talking about
Item
21. And it's just item 21. All in favor of tabling item 21, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So we have 4 ayes. Anyone opposed? One opposed. So item 21 will be tabled. Any further discussion on the remaining items? Yeah,
Can we still discuss the item that's tabled?
I think we can. If you don't mind, Councilor Kenny, can I just go to Councilor Stevens and then I'm going to come right back?
Okay.
That's okay. Councilor Stevens, do you have a question?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll make certain that I was counted as an aye on 21. I just had a quick question in regards to the Granite Pathways audit, which was done under the parent company of FedCat. And I have never seen a financial audit for nonprofits in this format. And I'm just a bit concerned. And I'm wondering if there's a second set of eyes within Health and Human Services that is looking at the format of these audits. Thank you.
So we have an entire department, the Program Quality and Improvement Department, that does audits on our vendors and our contracts, making sure that they're meeting their metrics. I'm happy to have our director of that department follow up with you, Meredith Toulouse, to answer your questions about that audit.
That would be great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think we're going to beat that 7.5 hours from yesterday.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
All with me. I'm going to pull a chair up in a minute.
I'm going to stop asking questions here shortly. So a few years ago, when I was on the Council Wheeler, we had this issue, I think it was Serenity House down there.
Serenity House.
I think I know it well.
I got to say, the council really did a good job along with the Attorney General to really kind of, from the governor, to turn that around and get some eyes on the problem. And so when we're looking at these nonprofits, that are receiving hundreds and in some cases millions of dollars, do we know the capacity? I mean, obviously Councilor Gatsis has asked for financials to make sure that they meet the matrix. But do we look at the capacity and ability of these nonprofits, one, to provide the service, but more importantly, to manage the money?
Yes, and if Meredith Toulouse is on the phone, I believe she is, she can speak in more in depth to our entire department that monitors that. So I'm going to see if Meredith can chime in here.
Any other part to that? Do we work with the Charitable Trust Division?
Yes, we do, on a regular basis. Meredith, are you on?
Meredith, are you with us this morning?
Meredith, could you press 5 star, please, so I can identify your line?
We'll circle back to you, but we do have those functions.
Good morning.
Oh, there she is. Go ahead, Meredith.
Good morning. This is Meredith Toulouse. Hi, Councilor Kenny, could you repeat, or I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it was Councilor Kenny, Councilor Wheeler, could you repeat the question?
Yes, thank you. I'll repeat the question, keep it a little bit shorter. A few years ago, Serenity House in Manchester, some of these nonprofits, we question about them having the capacity and the financial, the capacity to be able to handle both the service and the money to provide, the service for the nonprofit. In working with the Charitable Trust Unit, do we know when we're providing contracts to these nonprofits whether they can handle the money and provide the service? How do we do that?
Thank you for the question. We do work closely with the Charitable Trust Unit, but for all of our contracts, we do a risk assessment as part of the procurement process. And that's a programmatic risk assessment and a financial risk assessment. It's standardized. So for the financial component, every bidder is reviewed to look at their financial stability. And then we determine what level of monitoring we want want to do based on the response of the bidders that are awarded. So federally, we're required to do more intense monitoring where someone shows more risk, and that's what we would do. That might include audits, file reviews, interviews with staff, all kinds of different things. We would do kind of a lower level of monitoring where we don't perceive as much risk. And in all instances where there's anything above what we call a low to moderate risk, we would certainly be in contact with the charitable trust unit. So, does that answer your question, Councilor?
Right, thank you for that answer. Just one quick follow-up question. On the federal side, is that a recent mandate with regards to oversight?
It is not recent. However, it was probably a few years ago that the federal single auditors started really paying attention to the requirement to do subrecipient monitoring. So I think in all states, states stepped up their rigor with which they do that risk analysis and the rigor with which they do the monitoring of their providers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion on any of these remaining items?
Just one more on that item. If somebody can just check when you get your information, because my understanding is that Howard Homes uses their line of credit to meet the criteria that the department is looking for. And I'm not too sure that somebody on the private sector would look at that in the same way, so I just ask you to look at it.
In terms of the cash on hand?
Cash on hand, yes, they use the line of credit.
Okay.
Councilor?
Yeah, go ahead, Mary, sorry.
Sorry, yes, they do indeed, and then when we do the ratios, we remove the additional line of credit from their ratio when we do our calculations. We include the amount used, which we do for all of our entities, to make sure when we evaluate whether they meet the standard, but we redo the ratios when we receive them from Harbor Homes.
We never see those reviewed ratios. So if you could be so kind to send those to us?
We will send those, yeah.
Great. Okay, any further questions on these items? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of items 17 through 23, with the exception of item 21, which has been tabled, all in favor of these items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
And anyone opposed?
Aye.
With that, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 25 through 28 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Public Health Services.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
It's an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the items are approved. And that concludes our items from the Department of Health and Human Services. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 29 through 58 from the Department of Transportation. And a motion? And a second? Any questions on any of these items? And I know the department was going to talk a little bit about exit 4A as well.
I hope more than just a little bit. I have a question on
Okay, so let's, if we can, first let's start just with any questions on the specific items. Are there any questions on item 52? We have a question.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't get a lesser rate than $900,000 from Citizens Bank for armored added services within the Division of Operations and holding on to the money? Seems that they have an awful lot of money in this state that they hold on a pretty regular basis.
These contracts are competitively procured, and this was the winning bidder from the original procurement services.
Well, I understand winning bidders, but I would think that we'd be looking at all of the services that they provide to the state and what they're paid when they charge us, because that just looks like an awful lot of money, going up almost close to 30% from the year before?
So certainly we can talk to emergency services and determine what other agencies might be using similar contracts and to make sure that the pricing that we're receiving is competitive and similar to what other agencies are being charged. I think there is an opportunity for efficiency.
Well, they have, I think they hold most of our accounts at Citizens in the state.
So this is specifically the services to pick up cash from our toll cloud facilities, which is a little bit different from some of the other banking arrangements that we have.
Once they collect that money, where does it go?
It's deposited into our turnpike accounts.
Which is held by who?
The state of New Hampshire, I'm not sure who specifically the Treasury uses for our turnpike accounts.
I believe it's Citizen Bank.
I will certainly ask the state treasurer's office who is holding our turnpike accounts.
If that's the case, then we should be getting a much better rate than what they give us. All right, that's my piece.
This is the last extension of this contract, so by the last 2 years, and this will be rebid. Because this was bid, it had two built-in extensions, so after this, it's the final extension, it will be, the next go around will be rebid. So.
Further discussion on this or any of the other DOT items? Councilor Kennedy?
Item 58, when we're ready.
Item 58? Okay, go ahead, Councilor.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner of Transportation, welcome. So I've gotten a few calls on item 58. This is the, I guess, contract, the operating agreement between DOT and Claremont Concord Railroad and New England Central Railroad, which is a 10-year lease in West Lebanon and near the Westboro Yard, I guess it's called. And it's just kind of 1 or 2 or 3 questions. As we renew this, we've gone through the whole formality of doing that and done it the right way. There's been some abutters who have been concerned that that the new company, I think it's Superior Gas, who bought that whole section from Rhymes, it's going to be in full operation. So there's concerns about some of the safety elements that are in place on the Westboro Yard, whether it's strong enough safety elements. There's a local revitalization committee that wants to provide economic development opportunities there to include housing. So the question that really comes up is, of course, there's some folks who always throw out the example, look what happened to that town in Canada when they, a train derailed and hit a gas company and exploded and created a lot of damage and loss of life. So one is, do we have to move on this right away, or is there a time for a group to kind of just look at this? I know I've always supported local control in the city, of Lebanon, is fine with moving forward with this. But there has been some other citizens who have suggested, well, can we, take a look, or will we have the ability, will the contract be strong enough that DOT can work with, the principal parties in and around this area to make sure it's safe and that this economic development viability. Also knowing that some of the funds have been frozen to knock down some of the state buildings there, and I think some of that is associated with some of the buildings up in North Conway. And so there's a lot going on, there's a lot not going on. So I'm trying to, represent a little bit of all the parties on this. So what are your thoughts on this?
So, Council, let me try and unpack a little of what you just said. Yes, there's a lot going on in the area that we refer to as the West Lebanon Yard. The contract before you today is the operating agreement for the railroad to continue to operate. So it's a discrete matter. That being said, within this agreement, there is a provision that allows the railroad operator to enter into subleases with abutters who will be using the rail line. And so I know there is concern around the previously Rhymes, now it's Superior, a Canadian-based company that owns the facility adjacent to the Westway Yard. However, when it comes to the movement of those types of fuels on railroads, we have to follow all federal laws. And I think that has been the challenge in the past. In some cases, the City of Lebanon would like to see previously Rhymes and now Superior go above and beyond what is required by federal regulation. And certainly Rhymes was willing to be a good neighbor and invest and make some of the modifications to their site to mitigate the city's concerns. But at the end of the day, all they're required to do is follow federal regulations and in some cases preempt state and local regulations. And so as long as they're operating consistent with those federal guidelines, then there would be no reason for us not to move forward with this contract. Now, separately, we have some surplus parcels of land that, yes, we would like to work with the city and support them as they look at redevelopment opportunities. And so during the last budget process, because of the surplus of demo funds, there was some one-time money provided for us to move forward with demolitions. You referenced the buildings in Conway as well. Because of some of the financial uncertainty during the COVID-19 period, we put some of that work on hold. As we're getting more of a clear picture of this next budget, we'll be working with the governor's office to determine which items we can now move forward with. But we understand the advocacy for us to move forward with demolition of the one structure that was funded in the last budget. So that's a little bit of a separate issue that's discrete from this contract of the operations of the railroad.
Sure. I mean, some folks would look at it one and the same, but I see what you're saying. So with looking into the next budget, and you're talking about dilapidated buildings that the city is saying, that creates a risk. In fact, there's actually a state law for just buildings in general that if you sell as real estate, you have to improve them before you sell them. So it's just reflective on the state of New Hampshire that we knock those buildings down and dispose of them, and they put in $280,000 of in-kind service, along with the state's funding. That's on the table. So as they would say, they have skin in the game. And so my concern is that you've got a very active group that wants to move out and do something positive, that they're going to get highly demoralized, and they're going to lose that momentum to do something really good and work on their future economic development. So that's the thing that I'm really advocating for, and I understand it's a budget issue, and I understand there's lots of money coming in from the federal government that's for transportation, I hope, and if it happens, that's great. But I just, I lay that out because, if we can be proactive in any way, I think it would be a good thing.
Your comments are noted.
Great, thank you. For additional questions, Councilor Wheeler, did you have a question on something?
On 33, hopefully a simple question. I don't know what the word scour means. I read the item. It sounds like some abutment work and then some steel plates on a wooden covered bridge. That's kind of, it just explains the scope of the work, just a touch, not a long
This project is for scour protection. Basically that means at any location where you have a high current that can be undermining or causing erosion of your piers and abutments, you want to make sure you're armoring all of that substructure and so that it's not vulnerable. That's the gist of the contract.
Did I read something about steel plates, or did I assume that, on the abutments? Maybe I saw the word armor.
Armoring is essentially using large stone and riprap and things to hold the. Usually it's the scours because they're soft soils or gravelly susceptible soils that are. Scour is essentially another word for erosion. It erodes around the pier because of the velocity and the eddying of the current and things like that. So the armoring, usually it's otherwise we call it riprap, or, kind of large stone protection, tamped down and chinked in to withstand the velocity of the water and, keep the materials around the gear.
We use low targets, but they take big stones locked together.
Yeah.
Big rocks.
Big rocks, yeah. Like a breakwater or something, similar to a breakwater.
Thank you very much. I think Councilor Warmington has a question.
Commissioner, thanks for taking the time to answer most of my questions the other day. This is on item number 40. So we talked about this item where we put out to bid, there were 5 bidders, but 3 of them were disqualified for deficiency. And you suggested to me that you thought it was because of the penny bids on the flaggers. And that the bidders, I don't know, didn't know to not bid a penny, but I went back to look, and if you took the lowest amount that you accepted for flaggers was $24,000 by Lydell, and you added that into these other deficient contracts, they still would have been below the department's estimate. And you ended up having to take a bid above the estimate. And is this just a vendor education issue so that they know better that their bid is going to get disqualified as deficient?
These contractors have been spoken to about this issue previously. We call this unbalanced bidding, and it's mathematically unbalanced. We don't support penny bids. These contracts are also federally funded, and it's something that's on a highway. It's supposed to be out as well. So in this case, some of the firms have definitely been spoken to previously about this, so they should have expected this result.
So they know better, they do it anyway, and they get you disqualified. Okay.
And one other thing, we did apply, because we did do the bid analysis, we did apply a reasonable unit price to those items that they bid a penny or a dollar for. It would have altered the bid order, even though that they might have been less than the department's estimate. It would have affected the bid order, which would have also been a potential cause for a claim from one of the other contractors. So that's another reason why we look closely at those unbalanced bids for reasonableness.
Thank you. Further discussion on any of the items before we go forward?
So one of the...
Governor?
Oh, yes.
Item 52.
Item 52?
Please. We're seeing a 34% reduction in processing, and we're seeing an increase in the processing fee, though it's minor, from almost $6,000 to $1,240. But we're also going to 2 electronic toll systems. So I'm concerned about this contract.
I'm sorry, Councilor,
Thank you.
you're referring to number 52.
Item 52 on the
processing.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the Commissioner? Councilor Wheeler?
Just because I've been gone for a while, is the department still giving us the contingency report for all these projects, and how much of the contingency was used and how much wasn't used project by project that we had 2 years ago?
We still get a report for every contract on what the final amount spent was against the original contract amount and how much unspent contingency was then freed up to that subsequent project containment plan.
Quarterly or?
Annually.
I think it's annually.
And?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually just reviewed it, I don't know if you signed off on it, but in the next meeting or following meeting, you should be seeing the FY20 summary.
We did the analysis at the conclusion of the construction season, as you might imagine, so that it's usually early in the new year that you see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no further discussion. I think we're going to go on. I know there's a lot of questions on exit 4A. Councilor Gatsas, yes?
Just waiting for a presentation.
Okay, great. Well, let's get that process started.
So last week I did prepare a letter with some attachments that I mailed out to you all, not knowing whether or not you received it, especially with Monday being a holiday. I have hard copies here, and Councillor Stevens, you should have received it electronically as well as by hard copy. I'm sorry, Councillor?
I did not receive the hard copy.
It should be coming to you any day in the mail. It was sent out.
Thank you.
And I'll take 2 seconds, but I want you to keep going. I'll let Councilor Gass start the discussion. What's that? No.
I do.
So for the benefit of the new councillors or returning councillors, we had advertised the construction of the Exit 4A project in Derry and Londonderry as a design-build contract. There was a desire to advance the construction of this particular project as quickly as possible. And so the department pursued design-build as an opportunity to try and advance elements of the construction while we finalize the right-of-way acquisition and the design of later phases of the work. Unfortunately, when we advertised that project, the apparent winning bidder came in at $30 million over our office estimate. And as you might imagine, at that time, we just couldn't make $30 million available without significantly impacting the rest of our project portfolio. And then further to that, as was discussed earlier, we do a very thorough bid analysis to identify what the discrepancies are between our office estimate and each of the bids that we received. And we felt strongly that there were some items that we really could deliver this project at a lower cost by bringing it back in-house and advancing in a more traditional design bid-build way. Unfortunately, because when we do a design-build procurement, if we don't move forward with a contract, we're not allowed to discuss the actual bids that we received in detail for a period of 2 years after we cancel the procurement and go in a new direction. So we've been unable to share with you that detailed bid analysis for that reason. However, we have also spoken in general terms to this issue and some of the opportunities that might be to both contain costs or reduce costs as we now look with a new procurement on the horizon. The other item is during a design-build procurement, the 3 teams do a lot of work advancing the design effort. They're also encouraged to come up with alternative technical concepts, their thoughts on how you could build a project quicker or get a better product, minimize the impact on the traveling public during construction. And what happens is at the conclusion of the process, the teams that we don't award a contract to, we pay out a stipend, and then we own that intellectual property and we can incorporate those ATCs into our design, irrespective of what team you move forward with. And so late last year, there was an item before the council to release the stipend payment to all 3 teams in this case, because we decided not to move forward with the apparent winner. 2 of the 3 teams responded and have been paid their stipends, so we now own those ATCs. But the 3rd team, we're still working with them and have not got back to us saying that they will accept the stipend. So we're not able to incorporate their ideas and suggestions at this time. But we have done a thorough bid analysis. We've been looking at ways that we think we can rescope the project. Because we want to scope it differently, that means that we could not go back and reuse any aspects of the design-build procurement. We would have to start over with a new RFP and new responses. And so that's why when we laid out the schedule, there was going to be much less risk doing a traditional design bid build, and the timeline was fairly similar. Because of the effort that we have to go to develop a new RFP, put it out, get responses for those proposals, etc. And so we are now moving forward with procuring the consulting services to conclude the final design. We, before the end of the calendar year, received proposals from 3 design consultant teams. We have been reviewing and exploring those proposals. We have selected the vendor. We're now negotiating with them and sharing with them the ATCs that we do own, those suggestions and ideas that should be incorporated And as we then negotiate the level of effort and settle on the contract terms, we'll then bring that to Governor and Council for approval. And so the packet that I have passed out this morning, there's a cover letter that summarizes all of what I just shared. There's also been a lot of questions around the budget for this project. And so the first document you'll see is both the design build budget, how much we thought this project was going to cost, and how the items were split between the three phases, which is preliminary engineering, right-of-way, and construction. And then there's been a number of questions from both Councillor Gatzis and Councillor Stevens, who represent the two towns, about the history of the budget and how the costs have increased over time. So we summarized that information as well. And then the biggest cost increase actually occurred in 2019, when the department took over this project from the two towns. This was a locally managed project initially. We asked the consultant to do a much deeper dive, and it was actually in preparation for the last update of the 10-year plan that we did a thorough analysis, and that's how the current budget was established. So for that background, in your packet you'll also see what the cost drivers were for that increase in the budget in the last 10-year plan cycle. And then the last document that you have is our sort of high-level current schedule for advancing this project. As we work with the design team that's been selected, they're really being encouraged to look for every opportunity to phase this project and make sure that we can get early action construction contracts underway. So we're hoping that we can meet the schedule that's in front of you, but this is something that we're confident we can meet. And then you'll notice at the bottom of the schedule, you have the original design build contract, so you have some sense of what the overall impact of this change of direction is. So I know Councillor Stevens, you had a number of questions, and Councillor Gatzis, and she both represent the two towns. We're available today to address any outstanding concerns that you might have, or we can continue to schedule meetings to brief you on the history and what's happened up until now. The other thing I will say is the two towns have had a lot of questions as well about both the path forward as well as the budget. And Bill Cass is with me today because he met with both town administrators and their public works staff last Friday and walked them through the prior expenditures and the current budget also. And I believe that we have addressed the questions that they have.
Okay, let's open up for some questions if you could.
Is there a reason why you haven't looked at just doing phase 1, 2, and 3?
That's exactly what we're looking at, Councillor. It's one design contract to advance all of the final design for each phase, but we're trying to identify different contracts that could be executed for the construction, so that we can break ground as quickly as possible. We know we already own the right-of-way in the area where the interchange is going to be built. It was always our intention to complete that phase first. So we're hoping we can get a contract out to bid for that first piece. To be honest, the most complicated part of this project and what really increased the bid amount that we saw is phase 3, which is the Sinead Road part of the work, which is the roadway work on the existing alignment where we have a lot of driveways, businesses and residential homes. With little strip takings and right-of-way all the way along for easement to be able to do that work. It's very tight, and so we know there's a lot to work through as we finalize the design of that segment, and that's what's going to take time. But the other phases closer to the interchange, we should be able to do much sooner.
I'll just add one thing. We looked very hard at that because when we had some of the debriefs with the design-build teams, that was a suggestion that had come up. And we looked really hard at whether we could have taken that existing procurement and somehow negotiated with one of the bidders, or get their agreement and just ask them for new prices for a reduced scope of work. through those discussions, for such a substantial change, it was, it was determined that really, for such a substantial change, we would have had to go back to the beginning and reissue the RFP. And when we compare that with, jumping right ahead, moving ahead with this conventional design bid build procurement, it was very comparable. So that's what made the decision. That would help support the decision to go forward with what we're planning to now.
I should acknowledge Matt Rogers here from the Attorney General's office, and he worked very closely with us, as well as others, to make sure that we understood what options were available to us based on the terms of the RFP and the way the design data statute was written.
When was the first time that you knew that you weren't going to meet the bid price?
When we opened the cost proposal, that was back in September, and then, as you recall, we took some time to go away to meet with the three teams. I'm still very appreciative of the fact that they were willing to sit down with us. They weren't contractually obliged to do that, and when we do debriefs, it's usually with the teams that weren't successful to understand how we scored their proposal. But all three teams were very forthcoming as to how they approached bidding this project. So we had those meetings, we worked with the Attorney General's office, and then I believe it was in November we made the decision to move forward with the design bid build. Immediately we started our procurement for the design team, and then we brought the items before the council to pay out the stipends.
I will say, one thing when we did have the debriefs after the bids were open with the design build teams, they were fairly critical of us that through the procurement process they had raised the concern that cost was undervalued. Again, we thought we had looked very hard at the cost estimate that we had put together, and we had based our decisions on that.
When we look back at the history of when they made those comments, it was right around the time that we were doing the update for the 10-year plan, and we'd already factored in a lot of those comments.
Further discussion? But when did you factor in the price? When did you know that the price was not going to be
In September when we opened the bid.
That was the first time you
First time we knew what the three teams had bid for the work.
Well, not my question. My question is, when was the first time that the department knew that it wasn't going to make that number?
When we picked up the, and that's why part of the history is outlined here, Councillor. When we picked up the project in 2015 from the two towns, as we worked through the final environmental and tax statement and stuff, we knew that the cost there was substantially low. That's what prompted in 2019 as part of the update of the 10-year plan, and as we were getting ready to finalize the environmental impact statement, we did a thorough, what we felt was a very thorough cost update. We had a lot of trepidation at the time about increasing the cost at that time, another $30 million, but we went through everything. We brought it out to the 10-year plan process. And that's the basis of the commission set of our estimate today. So really, when we first knew, when we picked it up from the town, we knew that it's probably low cost. We're in the middle of completing the environmental impact statement, and with the completion of that and the update of the 10-year plan in 2019, that's when we did the thorough cost update. Now, as the commissioner said, I think we were, I hate to say confident in retrospect, but we felt our estimate that we put out for the design build and the price proposal opening was adequate. If the bids had come in somewhat closer, if they were 10 or 15% higher, and we looked through, it might have been we might have had a different determination, but the 60%, close to 60% difference in price and some of the unknowns that were inherent in the design build process that led to those costs we weren't comfortable with that, and that led us to
So,
reject the bids.
so the first time that you realized that that was going to be more than what you were planning on spending was when?
So we adjusted our budget back in 2019 to the 10-year plan.
To how much?
Our current design build budget was 96.6 million. We are still very confident that we can deliver this project for close to that amount. We do not believe that we need to spend an additional 30 million to complete this project. As Bill was alluding to, there are items and unknowns that would have led the design build teams, because remember, the contractors are giving us a fixed price that they have to meet for this project. They were very conservative in how they approached estimating those line items. We are confident that as we advance this during a more traditional process, complete all of the subsurface evaluation, do all of the hazmat analysis, that we'll be able to deliver the project. There's also some scope changes we do intend to make as well. It's because of those changes in scope that we couldn't reuse the design build procurement, which will also help us manage costs. So we don't think we will end up spending anywhere close to what the apparent bid was. Our goal is to try and deliver this project for as close to the design build budget that we have as possible.
So for the sake of time, we can stick with this for a few more minutes, but I don't want the whole afternoon to get socked up with this. We can always come back and have another discussion, or you can have other questions. Any other questions on the presentation?
I don't know, Councilor Stevens has any questions.
Janet, do you have any questions, Councilor Stevens?
Thanks so much, Governor. I think we received the hard documents, so perhaps Commissioner Sheehan and I should speak on Monday or Tuesday of next week to be respectful of time. I don't have all these materials that I need. So I think I'm all set at this point. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, so obviously this is going to be an ongoing process. I know the bids are coming in, and the next steps is kind of ongoing. So as much as you can keep the council apprised, that would be obviously very helpful.
Probably the next big step, we will have a design contract for the design.
Approximately when?
We're hoping to get that in the next two months, so March or an April meeting, another meeting fall.
We'll strive for March, but it depends on how close we are to negotiate with the team.
Understood. Okay, now one thing I do realize is we never actually took a vote on any of the transportation items. So I guess we've asked our questions on the transportation items. So as a formality, if I may, all in favor of items 29 through 58, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And is there any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so hearing none opposed, those items are approved. And again, thank you very much for keeping us apprised of where we go. On next foray. I now ask a motion to adopt agenda items 59 and 60 from the Office of Strategic Initiatives.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Any discussion on 59 and 60? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That's an aye from Councilor Stevens. The items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 61 for the Department of Information Technology.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussions on item 61? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Councilor Stevens, on item 61?
Aye.
That's an aye. Thank you so much.
Aye.
Item 61 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 62 from the State Treasurer. Just a motion.
So moved.
Well, anyone, thank you. We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on item 62. Any questions or discussion on item 62 from the State Treasurer? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, item 62 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 63 for the New Hampshire Council on Developmental Disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
We have a Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of item 63, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor Stevens. It's an aye. Councilor Stevens, any opposed on item 63? Hearing none, the item is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 64, 65, and 66 from the Office of Professional Licensure and Certifications.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions on these? I think Councilor Wheeler might have some questions.
Question on item 66.
Morning.
Morning,
How are you?
Councilors. Lindsay Courtney for the record, Office of Professional Licensure.
Thank you. I'm just noticing this contract is, already 16, 17 years old, and we're renewing again for another 2 years. Is this ever going to go out to bid again?
So I do believe the original contract dates back to 2015. We are in the middle of an RFP process and just need a little bit more time for the extension.
So this is the last renewal?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on any of these items? Mr. Courtney? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, all in favor of these three items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor Stevens. Any opposed? The items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 67 and 68 from the Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on either of these items? Hearing none, all in favor of items 67 and 68, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor
Aye.
Stevens? Thank you. And any opposed? The items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 69 and 70 from the New Hampshire Employment Security.
Second.
A motion and a second. Thank you. Any discussion on either of these two items? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, the items are approved. See you, George.
There's still some informational items.
Well, enjoy the comfortable seat. We'll get there. We'll get to the informational ones soon enough. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 71 and 72 from the Insurance Department.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yeah, Councilor Warmington.
71.
Yes. Do we have is the commissioner here? Or is Hey, Chris, how are you? Good to hear you. I think we have a question from Councilor Warmington on item 71. Perfect.
Commissioner, sorry we haven't had a chance to meet yet. I'm just wondering about bringing in a new deputy commissioner at the 5th step. Is this position to replace a position held by Alex Feldwinkel previously?
It is, yes, Councilor.
So I knew Alex very well, worked with him for many years. He was so very experienced and so very knowledgeable about insurance. And I'm just wondering, when he departed, what level was his salary range?
I believe Alex was, he was at step 6, which was the top step before a 7th step was added. And I don't think there was very many months before his retirement that he was qualified to move up with the new 7th step. And that didn't happen, but he was at the top step for most of his time here.
And if we can, I think I know where this is going. So can you talk a little bit, Chris, about why Mr. Betancourt is coming in at the 5th step?
Sure, we considered that before we made the recommendation for this step. And this role and the direct reports under our deputy commissioner included a number of senior staff
The best paid report to the deputy commissioner would puts him just above his subordinate's top pay. And so at step 5, he is at the lowest step available to be above his subordinates. And that would be a classified subordinate.
I just have some concern about his very limited experience in the insurance industry coming in at a step 5.
But again, I believe it's more of a requirement given the folks that he's overseeing. Any further discussion on either of these items? Okay. Hearing no additional questions, all in favor of items 71 and 72, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Janet. Any opposed?
I'm opposed on 71.
With a no on 71, both items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 73 through 77 from the Department of Corrections.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
Stephen, thank you. Any opposed on these items? Okay, hearing none, the items are approved. Thank you very much. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 78, 79, and 80 from the New Hampshire Liquor Commission.
So moved.
Do a motion?
Second.
And a second, thank you very much. Any discussion on these items? Any questions at all? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of these 3 items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Mr.
Aye.
Stevens, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none opposed, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 81 from the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Thank you. Any discussion on this item?
Yes, Governor.
Sure. Do we have Scott with us on the phone? Director Mason, can you hit 5-star to join us on the phone? Good afternoon, Scott. Director?
I've unmuted his line. I'm not sure if he knows that it's unmuted, but he is on the call.
Okay.
I apologize. This is Executive Director Scott Mason.
Director, how are you? I believe we have a question from Councilor Wheeler on your item 81. Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Director. I have several questions, and I know this is a small dollar item, but my first concern is, why we only got one bid on this item. This is not an item that you need a professional arborist for. So can you tell me how this was put out to bid, how broadly it was advertised, and where?
I don't have answers for those questions, but I'd be happy to get back to you, Councilor Wheeler, with that.
And can you tell me why you just put this out? It appears it was put out to bid and just accepted an hourly rate without saying that we're going to get 60 trees pruned or 120 trees pruned. It doesn't seem like we pinned down what we're going to get for our money very well. So you can tell me why it was put out to bid that way?
No, the information does list out the numbers of trees at the different locations that they're going to be working on. In Enfield is 40 to 50 trees in that orchard they'll be working on. And down the sea coast, 25 to 40 trees that they'll be working on there.
Well, and I understand that, and if you take the average between your 25 and 40, it's going to cost us $200 a tree to prune these. So I just, I'm very curious of how we did it by the hour. We're not even, that's if every tree got pruned in that average that you gave us. So I think I'd like a little more information about this item, not against about releasing trees for the wildlife, but if you can plant a fruit tree for $25, I'm not sure should be pruning old ones for $60. So, I'd like to table the item. I'd move to table the item.
Okay, so we have a motion to table item 81.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of tabling item 81, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Item 81 is tabled. Great. So, Director, if you could get some additional information to all the councilors on item 81, we'll see if we can take this up at the next meeting. Thank you.
I was happy to.
Thank you, sir. So moving on, I'm now going to ask for a motion to adopt agenda item 82 from the Department of Business and Economic Affairs.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on item 82? Councilman Kenny.
Thank you, Governor. Do we have someone on the line?
Is Taylor with us? Taylor Caswell should be with us. I think we're going to unmute his line. Hey, Taylor.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Governor? Taylor Caswell.
Yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Caswell, this is Councilor Kenny. Just had a couple of questions. The Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry Development, can you tell me a little bit about that? I haven't had really much interaction with that office.
Well, the office does not yet currently exist. We thought of it about a year and a half ago by the legislature. We've been in the process of working with the Northern Border Regional Commission to help fund that office with federal dollars. We took it quite a bit of time to get that pulled together, and we had, the last couple of months with some higher priorities. So this is the point where we're finally getting those resources brought in to be able to fund that office.
Thank you. Since I represent most of the northern part of the state, I'm very interested in this office. But secondly, Northern Borders Awards go through the Business and Economic Affairs Department. So I've always, wondered why awards from Northern Borders, don't come through Governing Council, but now I see one that actually is coming before Governing Council. So can you explain that relationship? Because you technically could apply for more funding for other things going on in business and economic affairs through this fund.
Correct, and I know we've had this conversation previously, Councilor. I think one thing to bear in mind is that these funds that we're using here are for this specific purpose, and they're being authorized by the Commission for similar use in each of the 4 states that are members of the Northern Border Commission, so New York, Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire. So it's not part of the usual award process that I know you're very familiar with, that's run on an annual basis, where grants are awarded in a competitive process. As far as what BEA's role is in all of this, BEA is the representative of the state and the representative, I'm the representative, Governor Sununu, on the commission itself. And we also have staff that work year-round with entities and partners in the 6 rural counties that are now eligible under the Northern Border Commission resources to work with them in developing projects, but also to administer the competitive rounds that occur each year. So it's a substantial role that we play, and that's a resource that's been growing over the last couple of years, and the organization has been maturing. So it's I think, a wonderful opportunity for communities within those 6 weeks to get some resources they need.
So I guess my last question is, since the state, unless it's some separate program within Northern Borders, but when the state, awards these Northern Border grants to the 6 county, whoever scores the highest, And your office has applied for this funding for Northern Borders Regional Commission. Isn't in essence your own employees scoring this and voting for this? So, I mean, do you have to recuse yourself? How does that process work?
So there's a couple of programs that are authorized within the commission structure for use by the states, either for the cost of administering all the programs on behalf of the commission, so running all of the various awards programs that described. But there are also initiatives that the commission takes on itself that are not necessarily part of the competitive process per se, as we're used to seeing, but are made available to the states to pursue those initiatives individually within the state. And outdoor recreation as an economic driver for rural counties across the 4 region has been identified as one of those areas by the commission. So that's where these resources come from. They are not coming from the normal allocation that we will receive to distribute under a competitive process.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on item 82? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of item 82, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilor Stevens?
Aye.
Thank you. Any
Aye.
opposed? Item 82 is approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 83 through 93 from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just
Councilor Kennedy?
not that I'm going to take up any time here, Governor, but I would like to say to the Commissioner at one point, since there's a lot of conservation easement contracts, that I get a briefing at one point on exactly what's transpiring, because I didn't really have a chance to interact with the Commissioner on those contracts.
So maybe like a conservation easement summary type thing? Yeah. That'd be great. We'll make a note of it and make sure.
Counselor, I'm here, Sarah Stewart's here, definitely, let's set that up.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion on any of these items? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of items 83 through 93, please signify by saying aye.
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 Council Stevens, thank you. Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion on agenda items 94 through 111A for the Department of Environmental Services. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of these items? Give everyone a moment. Oh, Councilor Kennedy?
Just a general question, but I know that, we've had a highly successful water drinking fund. And I'm just wondering, is that the fund that Senator Morrisell put together?
Also the chair of the Trust Fund Commission.
And if I may, Commissioner, not to add too much work to your plate, but some of the, maybe a summary of the existing projects, and maybe so the councilors can see what's in their districts and ongoing or even completed with some of these funds. That would be great.
Yeah, happy to do so, Governor. It's a great, to me, it's one of the more pleasant things I get to do in my seat, and it's just a great initiative in the state. I think we've been able to accomplish some great things, but I'd be happy to help advertise that and draw people's attention to it.
Amazingly efficient. It's really impressive. These projects go so fast. Okay, if there's no other questions on the items from the Department of Environmental Services, all in favor of items 94 through 111A, please signify by saying aye.
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 Councilor Stevens, thank you. Any opposed?
Madam Governor,
Yes.
do you have an opportunity, or council in Concord have an opportunity to talk to the mayor of Concord to see if we can get some water into Bell?
We had another discussion. Commissioner, do you want to add anything? I don't have anything additional to report, other than there's a lot of history there, that it's very challenging, I get a lot of words like that, and so I'm not sure if you want to add anything, Commissioner.
Thank you, Governor, Councilor. So yeah, I've had two since the last discussion, the last meeting. I've had two discussions with Mayor Boulay, and he said apparently some medical issues, so it's been a little bit out of pocket. But the bottom line is, as I understand it, and we've offered to assist when they get to that point, and maybe even look at the trust fund. My understanding is they're evaluating at the city level their long-term water needs. They probably will need some long-term investments, and they're trying to evaluate how that jives with adding new customers. So that was not a hopeful discussion. I think they just need to work through that type of analysis. So I had a brief discussion yesterday, the day before with him again, but he's still working on that issue. So more to follow, I think, is the short answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on, we have items from the Department of Education. I now ask for motion to adopt agenda items 112 through 117 from DOE.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of these items? We have a question on item 112, okay? I think the Commissioner's here. Good morning or afternoon.
For the record, Frank Adelman, Commissioner of Education.
Good morning, Commissioner. I just was looking at this item, and I see that there's $1.6 million available, and just a very small amount of it has been spent. I'm just wondering, where are you on this project? How are we going to address the issues, the underlying issues?
So actually, we should be very happy that very little has been spent. So we received an allocation from the water fund that was just being discussed to remediate lead in the schools, and we have not found many instances of that. So any place that it has been detected through our testing protocols, we have remediated that, but we should all be happy that there were not systemic problems in our system.
So that this contemplated there was going to be more problems than there actually are?
Correct. We were uncertain as to what the extent would be. We still have the funds available to schools in the event that they discover something in that process, but so far we've not had a significant problem.
And any funds that aren't used, what will?
I would assume that they'll just revert back to the water fund.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on these items? Okay, hearing no further discussion, all in favor of items 112 to 117, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any Councilor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed on 116.
Notice of no on 116, the items are approved. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 118 through 129 from the Department of Safety. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, thank you very much. All in favor, I'm sorry, right. We're going to do a little presentation in a moment on the DMV for a few minutes, but just to go through these items. Any question on any of these actual items, 118 to 129?
Well, Governor, tangentially related is the instant check gun line.
Yes.
You have a very short update on the progress being made to make instant checks instant.
Okay, sure. Anything else on the actual items themselves?
Governor, I don't know which item it refers to, but I just remember reading a packet that was sent to me about the 911 relationship with Vermont. And I don't know, maybe that's something that we can discuss.
I think maybe in item 129, that's the next gen 911 customer premises equipment system. I think maybe that could have been it.
It was on the consent calendar, sir, the one that he's referring to.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah. Well, no, I just had a question, but I can ask it later.
Okay. Any other questions on the actual items themselves? Okay, hearing no further discussion on the items themselves, are you okay voting for the items? Sure. Okay. Then let's go ahead. All in favor of items 118 to 129, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Stevens, thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, the items are approved, and I'll invite the Commissioner to come on up. And I see Director Balecki is here as well, one from the DMV. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. And I know you have a robust presentation, and I'll let you guys jump right into it.
Good afternoon, Governor. Before I start with the DMV, shall I address council really?
Great.
Yes, so Governor, as you're well aware, we have been working very hard to address some backlogs in the permits and licensing unit, currently referred to as the gun line. In the last several weeks, we have redefined our scope of what searches we do, what are the parameters for doing a background check. We have addressed certain backlogs in queues, which include new purchases. So, ladies and gentlemen that want to go in and purchase a firearm, what is the time to get the approval or the delay or the denial? We've also looked at backlogs in a delayed queue, and then we've also looked at backlogs in a queue of return of firearms, which is a check that we're required to do for the courts. So I would say over the last 3 weeks or so, we have worked very hard to redefine the parameters. We have aligned ourselves with the FBI system, the NICS check. So we have gone along with their parameters for their checks, and we have also added to those a list sent over by the AOC on some where protective orders that aren't entered into NCIC, and we are also checking the New Hampshire criminal check. We have also trained additional folks to do that. What we found is we had only certain individuals that could do certain tasks. We've cross-trained. We had trained 7 additional personnel yesterday. We've reduced the backlog from the courts. We've reduced the backlog in the delayed status. And again, we've really kind of redefined, trying to stay not only with what the FBI does, but a couple checks above that as well. So, it's been very hard, but I think the other thing we're looking at is potential in the future software improvements, because what we've found in our assessment is we don't have the tools to really give you the metrics, the everyday, what's happening day to day, in comparison. So, to Councilor Wheeler's question, we have put a full group of state troopers, sworn in civilians to address what really needed to get done. And I think we have turned the corner on that, and I'm confident that moving forward we'll address that with staffing and resources and work with technology to keep it where it needs to be. And specifically to his question of instinct, and we've really looked at that. What's our goal? We're going to try, and sometimes it can be 2 minutes or less if you're on the phone call with her. But we are looking at that, 30-minute or less, instant whenever possible, and instant being follow-up with warning. This is permit to licensing unit. Taking the information and given the response. So, I think that we've really looked at it, and we've uncovered some things. I think we've come up with some new solutions that weren't there before. So, we're required to really look at it. I think we've turned the corner on it, though.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. So, without further ado, I would like to just, Director Belicki is going to have 5 minutes to give you a quick overview. But before I start, I want to say that I want to thank the Governor for his investment, capital investments, for solutions to improve customer service. The Director not only is focused on customer service, but everything that she oversees at the DMV really relates to the safety and security of New Hampshire. Removing hazardous drivers from our roadways, as well as getting folks the service that they need. And I cannot be more proud of her and her team for what they've done. So she is going to kind of go through this, but as always, anyone that wants a tour or wants something more offline, we will accommodate you. So, good afternoon, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Governor, executive councilors. I know we're short on time, so I think there's a lot of great and detailed information in the slides themselves. I'm going to try to go rather fast. If you want me to slow down or stop, please interrupt me. Slide number 2, the DMV mission. I usually summarize it saying that our focus is on safety of our drivers, vehicles, which then focuses on the safety of our roadways. Slide number 3 provides you with a snapshot of just the volume of transactions that we've seen over 2020. I think that one highlight that I would like to show you here is just the number of calls that we received. We've seen a really unprecedented volume of calls, mostly as a result of our transition to services in the initial stages of the pandemic. Moving on to slide number 4, it kind of shows you the impact and transition into services. I'll just highlight that back in March of 2020, we shut our offices down for 2 days to public access. We were still available by phone and email. while we transitioned to appointment services. So this was removing extra chairs from our lobbies, ensuring that we are socially distanced both on the customer side as well as the employee side. And then back in March of 2020, we transitioned into appointment-only walk-in services. It's critical to tell you, though, that the first transactions that we continued to offer, the focus was on CDL. As you know, back in March, the CDL industry, and it continues to really play a vital role in the pandemic, and we ensured that those customers really had priority in getting appointments and coming in to continue to get licenses. It goes through a bit of a timeline of when we started introducing additional transactions with knowledge, road, and motorcycle testing that resumed back in June of 2020. And really from that moment on, we focused on increasing the availability of our appointments, reopening more and more offices. We're not quite fully operational yet, as you'll see later on in the slideshow, but we're very close and we're working hard to get us there. Slide number 5 talks about innovation, and again, I will thank Governor Sununu because back in the 2020-2021 capital budget, he authorized an item for us that provided us with funding for some online solutions, and we worked hard under the pandemic to implement some of those because they had a direct impact on our ability to continue to provide services. Some of those include the online application for motorcycle rider training, which was deployed in May of 2020, the online ticket payment update. Later on, we also introduced the ability to plead not guilty online. Prior to that, you had to do that by paper, send that paper to the DMV. We had to manually key it in before we could transfer that to the court. So really a big impact on us. Probably the biggest one, thanks to the CARES Act funding, the online appointment scheduler that we deployed in October of 2020. Prior to that, anybody who wanted to make an appointment with the DMV had to call, and one of our staff people had to make that appointment manually. That's the reason for the volume of our calls. That was the reason for really a long wait time on our call lines as well. Huge time saver, really well received, big efficiency for the DMV. It goes through some of the other items, and then I'll highlight at the end some of the things that we have upcoming. The impact of the pandemic on the New England motor vehicles. The next slide, number 6, gives you a little bit of a comparison of how well we did compared to other states. Slide number 7 goes through appointment availability. It shows you the average wait time to schedule an appointment depending on the appointment type. For licensing transactions, anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. Our biggest constraint right now is the road test, where folks have to wait up to 6 weeks, depending on the location. Working on that, really personnel and trained personnel and the examiners is still one of the constraints that's keeping us from ramping that up. Slide number 8, I would encourage you to look at that because our customers love the appointments. You don't have to worry about spending or taking the day off and spending half a day or a full day at the DMV anymore. You're coming in, you're in and out in 15, 20 minutes. Our customers really cannot tell us enough good things about the appointment schedule. Remaining constraints, really people. Our vacancies continue to be high. Our rate of absences continues to be high, and it's difficult to manage. We're working on it. We've got a number of positions that we're looking to actively fill. So hopefully as that process progresses and moves forward, we have more people who will be able to alleviate some of those constraints. Slide number 10 talks about services that are currently offered. As you can see, we're open mostly everywhere. At some places, limited availability, but we're working on improving that. Colebrook and North Haver, for example, were only open once a month. Prior to the pandemic, we were open there twice a month. So it's not terrible. We could do better. We're working towards that. We still have closures both in Milford and Tamworth, but hoping that in the beginning parts of February, we will be looking to open that as well. And when you look at the last column, which is the road test appointments, we're not testing in all of our locations yet. Again, pending some new hires, we're looking to increase that availability as well. Next steps, fill those vacancies. We really are working hard to do that. Then with that, we'll be able to increase the number of appointments that are available and then open our remaining locations. Slide number 12 goes in a bit more detail about some of the online services that we've utilized or deployed in 2020. You can read into more details there. But what I want to do is just highlight some of the things in slide number 13, which is the upcoming project. We've got a few things that we're working on right now. The online driver license duplicate. We're really looking forward to do that. Currently, those transactions are available through our Dropbox services. Again, our employees then have to take the paper applications and process them. We're looking to move that completely online payment, online application. We don't have to touch those. That project is completely funded through the prior capital funds. We're also looking to gain some more information on some initiatives that will help with our business partners. Electronic title lien transfers, electronic templates for our dealers, and electronic title applications. Really early stages where we're just information gathering, but we're really excited about the possibilities that will open. A huge project coming in June of 2021. We've been working on that for the better part of last year. It's the state-to-state initiative, which will connect us with a little over 30 states right now that are exchanging driver license information electronically. So we're working really hard and are on time to implement that. And then some of the other things, online motor vehicle record request, online boat fee calculators, and online restoration of licenses. Again, the goal is to improve, make it easier to conduct transactions with the DMV. I'll stop right there, catch my breath, and ask if you have any questions.
Well, that was great, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. But I wanted to just make sure that we had time for the counselors. So a lot of good information, and again, on a lot of these, the state had a very significant hiring freeze, and I think the Department of Safety probably felt the brunt of that more than anybody, frankly. So we do appreciate everyone's patience there, and at the same time, trying to get so much of this online. And I mean, a lot of it, for the sake of discussion, a lot of it does go back to even beginning, frankly, the tragedy that happened in July of 19 up north with a very severe car accident that led to a lot of states, frankly, almost every state in this country really looking internally in terms of record keeping and all that. And we didn't have a major problem here in New Hampshire, but where there were some delays and gaps, hats off to Commissioner Quinn and Director Bilecki, who just jumped right on board and really, within 30 days, had us up to speed. And with the idea to start implementing some of the stuff well before the COVID pandemic even hit. So we really were able to hit the ground running. But there's definitely some more work to do. But the idea of just getting this stuff streamlined, online, a little easier for folks, I think is going to go a long way. But with that, we can open up for questions for the council. Councilor Kenny?
You know what I'm going to ask, right? Rick Bilecki. So yes, one day a week or one day a month in Colebrook, and someone misses that appointment, it's 2 months. So, this is coming from local elected officials who say, we don't want people in their older years who are trying to avoid COVID, trying to, get to appointments, who now have, driver's license that have expired, who now need to get down to the supermarket. So, I know you said have them call me to call you, and I appreciate that, but that's just a reality up there, and I know there's some employment shortfalls as well. And I just wanted to compliment you on the online appointment service. My son used it, went to Twin Mountain, got his license renewed in December, the second week of December.
Thank you for that. And we are definitely focused on reopening. And I have to say that up north specifically, our locations for Colebrook, we are located in the basement of the town hall. In North Haverhill, we are sharing an office that the county courthouse is allowing us to use. That's amazing partnerships. They've been so great. In the beginning, we were somewhat constrained because they were closed as well. But as soon as they opened, they were really gracious to work with us to do that. And that's my goal, to reopen us back to the pre-pandemic state as well. We're working really hard to get there.
Governor, I know she glanced over the comparison of New England DMVs, but I will say that I think she's put herself in a position where she will have the best DMV in New England. And if you look at the comparisons to what she's done, even through COVID, she didn't suspend these projects, she completed them. And Mike Todd worked on this, and he's remote now, kind of helping out, so I want to give credit to Mike too. But I think it really is, it's amazing what she did during COVID, dealing with the COVID challenges, but she completed the projects that you gave us the ability to fund.
Further discussion or questions? Okay. All right, well, look, this is great information. Let us digest it a little bit, and I'm sure the council will come back with some additional questions.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So moving on to our items from the Department of Justice, there's two things to note. Number one, item 135 is being withdrawn by the department. So we won't be discussing item 135 today. Item 136 is a petition, and we'll take that one separately if we could, for a pardon. But moving forward with the main items from the Department of Justice, could I have a motion to adopt agenda items 130 through 134, I'm sorry, through 136A from the Department of Justice? Second. A motion and a second. Also noting that items 132 and 135 are not used. I'm sorry, 132 is not used, 135 has been withdrawn. Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on these items? Okay, hearing none. I'm sorry.
Are we voting on 136 separately? Because isn't that one where yes means no?
Yeah, we'll do 136 separate.
Okay.
So I apologize. We're going to do it's weird the way it was numbered. 130 through 136A, not taking up 136. 135 has been withdrawn, and 132 is not used. So we'll do 136 after that. Thank you very much. That wasn't very clear. So all in favor of items 130, 131, 133, 134, and 136A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor Stevens. So those are approved. 135 has been withdrawn by the department. I'm now going to ask for, let's talk about a motion to adopt agenda item 135 from the Department of Justice. 136, holy smokes. It's, I think we're all, could use some lunch, I suppose. I've asked for a motion to adopt agenda item 136 from the Department of Justice. For discussion. Sorry.
Governor, I move to deny the request for pardon on item 136.
Okay. So we have a motion to deny item 136. Is there a second to deny item 136?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. So any discussion on item 136? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of denying the petition for a pardon hearing as identified in 136, please signify by saying aye to deny the petition.
Aye.
And Councilor Stevens? Aye. Thank you very much. Any opposed? None opposed? Item 136 is denied. I know, I always mess that up. No one wants to say yes to this. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's patience there. I now ask for a motion to adopt agenda items 137 to 143 from the Department of Administrative Services.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of these items?
Sorry, item 139.
So we have a question on item 139. Joe, how are you?
Good morning. For the record, Joe Bouchard, Department of Administrative Services.
So I raised this when I talked to you the other day on 139, the last page, the budgeted versus the projected 17 versus the 77. You thought you were going to take another look at that. You thought it might be better.
Thank you for the call the other day. The last reclassification in the package it has an error, typographical error.
Oh, it's okay.
It is an error. What we typically do with these package reclassifications is we put them forward on behalf of the department. They're always asked to give us and give the council the impact of the hiring of the reclassification and how much it would cost. In this case, it would cost $17,000 to hire this person or into this new reclass position. Then we asked what the budget, the agency put the budget amount down. The lower number is the budget amount. The number is transposed to be the same number as the projected pay, so it's an error there. What I would ask the council is let us withdraw that last reclassification and bring it back for our future next meeting. And the rest of the items, the rest of the items be approved.
Okay. So we'll withdraw that item.
Yes, that last one. Because, yeah, there was another question asked that I think would be pertinent to Council Warrington asking about. There were two.
Right. So I'm sorry, what item number are you?
I'm sorry, Governor. Number 139.
Got it. I just want to make sure we get that.
We're going to ask the last. The last we talked to.
I think he's not looking to withdraw all of 139, just the last.
Just the last.
The last piece, and we're allowed to do that? I don't know if we're allowed to break it up. Are we allowed to break that up?
Question should be divisible.
I'm kind of looking
I don't know.
at
We've done it in the past, Governor.
So we have 5 questions.
Yes. Not all items are, some are more divisible than others. I don't know, but as long as it's allowed.
We start with the Chief Justice now.
Governor, while we're waiting, I'm wondering if we could get an update on the status of the state employees contract.
There's no update. There's nothing as transpired. I know the two teams have started meeting. Yeah, I believe so. They had a first meeting a couple months ago. So the process is underway, but there's no real update in the past month or so.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're going to withdraw that last piece on item 139. Great. Any other discussion?
And the other question?
There was a question that came up by Council Warrington about the position that was reclassified where it's a fill position. And it's it's position 16304, couple before this. And the question she asked was why if we are reclassifying the position and it's going down from a labor grade 16 to a 10, are we showing the budget amount for the next year to be the same amount that we're going to expend? And the reason is that in personnel rules, if an individual is in a position where it's downgraded, then they're held harmless for 2 years. So if the individual stays in that position for the next year, we cannot cut their pay.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? Okay. See no further discussion. I'll ask all in favor of items 137 through 143, with the exception of the withdrawn final item of 139. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councillor?
Aye.
Thank you. That's an aye. Any opposed? Thank you. So that the items are approved. We do have some informational items that have been presented. These are simply the final pieces of CARES Act that are coming through, but the vast majority of the CARES Act funds, they've all been spent. It's just a matter of the accounting and the final documentation over the last month as we close out all of that. Okay. Well, thank you. I know that was a long meeting. We had a lot of presentations. I appreciate everyone's patience and everyone just kind of plowing through as best we could. If you have any questions on any of the presentation items, feel free obviously to follow up with the commissioners themselves. With that, we'll see you next time. Thank you, guys. Good meeting.